Chapter 607. Sorry, brothers. Let's read this chapter tomorrow. All of you back off. Yihao knew that the more people there were in the lightning calamity, the more dangerous it would be. Therefore, the lightning calamity was no joke. Yihao said solemnly. Upon hearing Yihao's order, although everyone was worried, they still obeyed and left the range of the lightning calamity. Husband, let me stay with you. Looking at the lightning calamity, Yihao said. The purple sky supreme god estimated that Yihao's chances of surviving the lightning calamity were close to zero. However, he was unwilling to accept that Yihao had failed his tribulation and perished in the end. If this had happened in the past, she would have been overjoyed. However, Yihao was her man now. Life had always been so dramatic and unpredictable, making it impossible for people to understand. You back off too, Yihao said solemnly. If I leave, you might die. If I stay, you might still have a chance, the purple sky supreme god said anxiously. In fact, she was not confident that she could survive the lightning calamity. But for the sake of Yihao, she was willing to take the risk and gamble. Looking at the purple sky supreme god's anxious expression, Yihao was moved. He pulled the purple sky supreme god into his arms and said softly, "Be good and listen to me. Leave quickly. I promise that I will survive the lightning calamity safely. You are not lying to me?" Hearing Yihao's confident words, the purple sky supreme god did not understand why Yihao was so confident. Rumble. The sea of purple lightning rolled in the sky, and the thunder rumbled. It was so loud that everyone's eardrums were about to burst. The entire lightning field was pressing down. It looked like it was about to come crashing down. Outside the range of the lightning calamity, Guan Yu and the others felt that they could not breathe. Yihao and the purple sky supreme god stood under the lightning calamity. Their faces were illuminated by the sea of purple lightning. Their long hair fluttered even though there was no wind. They looked even more valiant. However, at this moment, everyone's hearts were incomparably nervous. They didn't dare to take another breath. Yihao looked at the lightning tribulation that was about to descend at any moment and said anxiously, "Hurry up, it's too late. Then you have to live." Purple Sky Supreme God didn't dare to force Yihao. He reluctantly left the area of the lightning trial. "My husband, you must survive the lightning tribulation." Purple Heaven Supreme God shouted when he saw Yihao standing proudly in the middle of the lightning tribulation. "Long live your majesty! Long live your majesty! Long live his majesty!" The people and soldiers who were watching immediately knelt on the ground under Guan Yu's lead. Although Lei Jie and the others couldn't help Yihao, they could only cheer for Yihao. In the face of this mighty thunder calamity, they were incomparably weak. Therefore, they were sweating profusely for Yihao. In their opinion, Yihao just broken through to the martial god realm. How could he survive such a powerful lightning tribulation? They could only pray that Yihao could survive the lightning tribulation. Although the chances were slim, they were unwilling to let go of this glimmer of hope. Everyone looked nervously at Yihao, who was in the lightning territory. "Come on." Yihao looked at the lightning tribulation that was about to descend from the sky. His heart was boiling with excitement. In fact, he wasn't too afraid of the lightning tribulation. Instead, he was looking forward to it. He knew why the lightning tribulation was so powerful. After all, when others underwent the lightning tribulation, they would reach the first order martial god realm at the peak of the martial saint realm. However, his lightning tribulation started from the ninth order martial god realm. It would be strange if it wasn't powerful. However, if it was someone else who had just broken through to the martial god realm, they would have no chance of surviving such a powerful lightning tribulation, let alone surviving it. However, he was different. Although the lightning tribulation was powerful, he was a ninth order martial god realm. Moreover, his ninth order martial god realm was definitely not an ordinary ninth order martial god realm. He couldn't forget that he could fight above his cultivation level. Up until now, he could fight above his cultivation level. Therefore, his current combat strength had completely surpassed the martial god realm. As for the cultivation level below the martial god realm, Yihao wasn't too clear about it. However, there was no doubt that with his current strength, a peak martial god realm expert wouldn't be his match. In an instant, the lightning tribulation in the lightning territory fell. The first lightning tribulation was only as thick as a thumb. Although it was only as thick as a thumb, it was filled with destructive power. It could definitely destroy any cultivator below the peak of the martial saint realm. If a person didn't have a strong foundation and relied on ammunition to cultivate to the peak of the martial saint realm, they wouldn't be able to survive the first lightning tribulation. It's coming. Looking at the descending lightning tribulation, everyone's palms were sweating. They looked nervously at Yi Hao, not knowing if Yi Hao could survive it. Husband, you can definitely do it. The purple heaven supreme God Emperor clenched his fists. His heart was in his throat. May his majesty be blessed. He will definitely survive the lightning tribulation and lead us to conquer the world. At this moment, all the ministers were thinking nervously. It could be said that at this moment, everyone in the Fire Dragon Empire froze. Without exception, everyone's gaze was fixed in Yi Hao's direction. Everyone's hearts were in their throats. I like to see how strong you are. Looking at the descending lightning tribulation, Yi Hao didn't dodge. Instead, he stood where he was and prepared to accept the lightning tribulation with his physical body. Although his cultivation had reached the 9th level martial god realm, his body was still weak. In terms of physical strength, he was still slightly weaker. This was something that every cultivator had. Therefore, going through the lightning tribulation was equivalent to rebuilding one's physical body and changing the quality of one's physical body. After a cultivator went through the lightning tribulation, the remaining power of the lightning tribulation in his body would be fed back to him and improve his body. Therefore, there was an unwritten rule that the more power of the lightning tribulation a cultivator endured, the greater the degree of change in his body and the greater the achievement he would achieve. Therefore, going through the lightning tribulation was definitely a matter of both danger and opportunity. Of course, if one wanted to obtain too much lightning tribulation to change his body, the prerequisite was that the person going through the lightning tribulation had to have a solid foundation. Otherwise, it was very likely that he wouldn't be able to hold on until the end and would be killed by the lightning tribulation. Once one went through the lightning tribulation, there was no turning back. This was something that all the cultivators in the Myriad Kingdom continent knew, because as long as one attracted the lightning tribulation, they would either succeed or face death. Soon, the thumb-sized lightning tribulation had already landed on Yi Hao's body. Suddenly, there was a crackling sound as the lightning tribulation surrounded Yi Hao's body. Everyone was stunned when they saw Yi Hao's actions. They didn't expect that Yi Hao would dare to use his physical body to resist the lightning tribulation. The Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor was also shocked. She didn't expect Yi Hao to be so bold. Chapter 608. Host, according to your current cultivation, you can try to enter the Lightning Dominion. It will definitely be of great benefit to you. At this moment, the system's voice suddenly sounded. All right, I'll try it once. Hearing the system's words, Yi Hao knew that this lightning tribulation was absolutely not life-threatening to him. Otherwise, the system would not have said this to him. Moreover, if others failed to pass the lightning tribulation, their lives might be in danger and they might even die. However, he was different. He had the 1,000 opportunities, 100 transformations, and dozens of clones. Therefore, even if he failed to pass the tribulation, he would not die. Thinking of this, Yi Hao rushed into the Lightning Dominion. What is he trying to do? Seeing Yi Hao's actions, everyone felt that they had been shocked enough today. But now they knew what shock was. After all, in the Myriad Kingdom continent, all martial artists were afraid of lightning tribulation. Others could not wait to hide. Who would rush into the Lightning Dominion? Everyone looked at Yi Hao's actions. His posture was to break through the Lightning Dominion. But was it possible? Everyone raised their heads and looked at the purple lightning dominion in the sky. In the thick purple lightning dominion, thunder and lightning were desperately rolling, emitting a destructive power that shook one's soul. Moreover, no one could see what was in the lightning. not to mention rushing into the lightning dominion. Even if they were far away from it, they would feel a dangerous aura. The lightning dominion was above Yin Long's imperial capital. Although the lightning dominion did not launch the lightning tribulation, it did not fall to the ground. However, the aura it emitted had already destroyed Yin Long's imperial capital. From this, one could see the power of the lightning dominion. And Yi Hao actually dared to rush into the lightning dominion as if nothing had happened. Husband, don't. When Purple Heaven Divine Emperor saw Yi Hao's actions, she immediately shouted in panic. Because the lightning tribulation was synonymous with destruction. And the lightning tribulation was just a part of the lightning dominion. And Yi Hao rushing into the lightning dominion was equivalent to using his body to resist the lightning power within a radius of 100 miles. Even she did not dare to rush into the lightning dominion within a radius of 100 miles. She had a feeling that even a peak martial god realm expert would die if they entered the lightning dominion. On the other hand, Yi Hao had just broken through to the martial god realm. Although she didn't know what Yi Hao was thinking, there was no way he could resist the Thunder region. Moreover, in the Myriad Kingdom continent, even the Thousand Emperor and the Devouring Demon God did not break through the Thunder territory. If Yi Hao were to charge into the Lightning Dominion, his name would be recorded in the history books of the Myriad Land continent. However, if he couldn't save his life by recording it in the annals of history, then what was the point? Your Majesty, the civil and military officials of the Fire Dragon Empire shouted anxiously when they saw Yi Hao's actions. But Yi Hao, who was in the Lightning Dominion, could not hear their words at all. Yi Hao looked at the Thunder Dominion above his head. He was only one step away from entering the Thunder Dominion. To be honest, after entering the Thunder Dominion and feeling the powerful aura of the Thunder Dominion, it was not impossible for Yi Hao to not feel nervous. Come on, Yi Hao made up his mind. Since he had already come this far, he would not back down. Crackle. As soon as he entered the Thunder Dominion, the sound of burning flesh could be heard from his skin. A burnt smell entered his nose. Yi Hao looked at the clothes on his body. The moment he entered the Thunder Dominion, they had already turned into nothingness. It could be said that at this moment, Yi Hao was standing naked in the Thunder Dominion. But at this moment, his body was badly mutilated and charred. Furthermore, the lightning was still surging towards him. It King hurts. At this moment, Yi Hao really regretted listening to the system, because this pain came from his feet to his head. The lightning had completely wrapped around him, not letting a single part of him go. Yi Hao felt the lightning wreaking havoc on his body. Yi Hao was just about to use his martial arts to resist, because the pain from the lightning was like being bitten by thousands of ants, causing him to almost faint. Host, it's best not to use your martial arts. Otherwise, you won't be able to achieve the best results. Furthermore, if you use your martial arts now, your martial arts will eventually be exhausted. Then, the host will really have no way out. Upon hearing the system's words, Yi Hao had the urge to curse. However, he gritted his teeth and persevered. He did not use his martial arts. Ding dong. Congratulations to the host for leveling up. Current level, level 6. Just as Yi Hao was about to faint, the system's notification suddenly sounded. Yi Hao's badly mutilated body actually started to heal rapidly. Feeling his body heal, Yi Hao could not help but let out a comfortable groan. However, this comfortable feeling did not last for long. The power of lightning arrived one after another, tearing at his body. His body, which had just healed, was once again badly mutilated. Awesome! Yi Hao gritted his teeth and roared. After an unknown period of time, Yi Hao fainted and woke up countless times. Finally, the system's notification sounded. Ding dong. Congratulations to the host for leveling up. Current level, level 7. Phew. Looking at the sea of purple lightning around him, Yi Hao finally heaved a sigh of relief. Although he knew that the pain would come soon, he enjoyed every second of his body's recovery. Indeed, just as his body finished recovering, the intense pain came again and filled Yi Hao's mind. Come on. Although the pain was unbearable, Yi Hao could grit his teeth and endure the joy of leveling up his body. Furthermore, the lightning zone had strengthened his body. If it were not for the lightning zone, Yihao could not imagine any other way to make his body break through and level up. Could it be that he's not dead yet? Oh my God, is he still human? What is his cultivation level? After seeing Yihao enter the lightning zone for a long time, the lightning zone still did not disappear. Everyone knew that Yihao was not dead yet. This was because the lightning zone was targeted at Yihao. The lightning zone would only disappear if Yihao died or succeeded in transcending the tribulation. If the lightning zone did not disappear, it meant that Yihao was not dead yet. I reckon that kid is using his martial arts to resist the lightning power of the lightning zone. The lightning zone is still more than 80 miles away. I reckon that kid won't be able to hold on for long. Many onlookers began to analyze the situation. The civil and military officials of the Fire Dragon Empire, as well as the Purple Sky God Emperor, felt their hearts in their throats as they looked anxiously at the lightning zone. This was because they could not see clearly what was going on in the lightning zone. They also did not know Yihao's current situation. At this moment, they could do nothing but pray nervously. Haha, Yihao kid, to think that you would have such a day. I originally wanted to do it myself, but it looks like there's no need for that now. At this moment, a middle-aged man's voice suddenly sounded. Chapter 609. Oh, what a coincidence. I didn't expect the famous Purple Heaven God Emperor to be here as well. The middle-aged man first looked at the lightning region before looking at the Purple Heaven God Emperor. His tone was full of surprise. Heaven-shaking God Emperor, what are you doing here? The Purple Heaven God Emperor was also surprised to see the heaven-shaking God Emperor. Everyone's eyes widened when they heard the two's conversation. Then, they began to discuss among themselves. Purple Heaven God Emperor and Heaven-shaking God Emperor? Who are they? Because the level of the divine nations was too high, most of the martial practitioners had never heard of the divine nations. Even the myriad kingdom ranking would hide the names of the 4 divine nations. Therefore, only experts above the martial saint realm would have heard of the 4 divine nations. They are the God Emperors of the Purple Heaven Divine Nation and the Heaven-shaking Divine Nation. Someone who knew the 4 divine nations said with a serious expression, Greetings, Purple Heaven God Emperor and Heaven-shaking God Emperor. Out of respect for the experts, the spectating experts immediately bowed to the two. After all, they were the leaders of the divine nations. They were definitely worthy of their respect. However, the exception was that no one from the Fire Dragon Empire bowed to the two. In their eyes, the only emperor they would bow to was Yihao. There was no one else. The people of the Fire Dragon Empire are arrogant indeed. You don't even bow to the two of us. As expected, you have no manners. Let this God Emperor teach you a lesson. The Fire Dragon Empire's refusal to bow made the heaven-shaking God Emperor feel very embarrassed. As he spoke, he was about to attack. After all, he was here to cause trouble for the Fire Dragon Empire. Now that there was a ready-made opportunity, how could he let it slip by? Heaven-shaking God Emperor, you don't have to do such a small thing yourself. Leave it to us. Just as Heaven-shaking God Emperor was about to attack, a few martial god experts suddenly stepped out from the crowd and flattered Heaven-shaking God Emperor. All right, the harder you attack, the better. The Heaven-shaking God Emperor was naturally happy to see people working for him. Let's see who dares to attack. As the martial gods were about to attack the people of the Fire Dragon Empire, the Purple Sky Supreme God suddenly spoke. The Heaven-shaking God Emperor raised his eyebrows when he heard the Purple Heaven God Emperor's words. A look of displeasure crossed his face. As for the martial gods who wanted to attack, their movements instantly froze. After all, the Purple Heaven God Emperor and the Heaven-shaking God Emperor were equal in status. They did not dare to offend the Purple Heaven God Emperor just to curry favor with the Heaven-shaking God Emperor. At this moment, everyone suddenly recalled something. At first, the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor seemed to have called Yihao her husband. The more everyone thought about it, the more shocked they were. Just what was Yihao's background? Even the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor was his woman. How many people in the myriad kingdom continent could do that? A bunch of trash. Heaven-shaking God Emperor was infuriated when he saw the stunned martial gods. At the start, Zhang Xian had vowed to help him. In the end, Purple Heaven Divine Emperor's words made these people not dare to make a move. How could not be angry at such a fence-sitter? All of a sudden, Heaven-shaking Emperor God attacked the group of martial gods. The martial gods were shocked by the strong martial power in his body, and they immediately started to dodge. One by one, they used their fastest speed. They did not expect the heaven-shaking God Emperor to change his attitude so quickly. However, no matter how fast they were, they could not compare to the heaven-shaking God Emperor's speed. They were quickly caught up and attacked by the heaven-shaking God Emperor. God Emperor, spare me. A martial god who was being choked by the heaven-shaking God Emperor had difficulty breathing and begged for mercy. However, the heaven-shaking God Emperor did not seem to hear his begging and directly broke his neck. God Emperor, please spare me. I was wrong. Seeing that the heaven-shaking God Emperor was really going to kill them, the remaining martial gods were really scared. They all knelt and begged for mercy. They knew that their speed was not comparable to the heaven-shaking God Emperor's. The Purple Heaven Divine Emperor quietly watched the scene in front of her. To her, as long as the heaven-shaking God Emperor did not attack the people of the Fire Dragon Empire, everything was fine. Moreover, these people deserved to die. In order to curry favor with the heaven-shaking God Emperor, they actually dared to attack the people of the Fire Dragon Empire. If the heaven-shaking God Emperor did not attack, she would kill these people with her own hands. In the blink of an eye, the heaven-shaking God Emperor had killed all the martial gods. Purple Heaven Divine Emperor, what is the relationship between that Yi Hao and you? Are you sure you want to help him? After dealing with the martial gods, the heaven-shaking God Emperor clapped his hands and asked the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor, as long as I am here, no one can touch the Fire Dragon Empire. The Purple Heaven Divine Emperor's voice was cold and inviolable. The domineering aura of an empress was on full display at this moment. Many people actually felt the urge to submit when they heard the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor's words. All right, then you better think carefully whether your Purple Heaven Divine Kingdom can withstand the power of the Heaven-shaking God Kingdom. The heaven-shaking God Emperor had no choice but to threaten the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor when he saw that the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor was not willing to yield. He did not believe that the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor would ignore the big picture. For the sake of the Fire Dragon Empire, he would ignore the Purple Heaven Divine Kingdom. I think you heard me clearly. Do you need me to repeat myself? The Purple Heaven Divine Emperor was not afraid of the heaven-shaking God Emperor's threat. The heaven-shaking God Emperor could not help but look at the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor a few more times. He realized that he could not see through the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor at all. He looked at the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor's unquestionable eyes and tone. He really did not understand why the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor was so protective of the Fire Dragon Empire. Heaven-shaking God Emperor was unwilling to give up. He laughed coldly and said, I heard that the Purple Heaven Divine Nation is not on good terms with each other. If I contact my royal aunt and cooperate with her, I don't know if you'll still be able to sit on the throne of God Emperor so steadily. Ha ha! The Purple Heaven Divine Emperor looked like he had heard the biggest joke in his life. Maybe the heaven-shaking God Emperor did not know that Yi Hao was his royal aunt's son. He actually wanted to find Yi Hao's mother to deal with Yi Hao. How could it not be funny? What are you laughing at? The heaven-shaking God Emperor felt uncomfortable when he saw the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor looking at him like he was an idiot. The heaven-shaking God Emperor did not understand what he said wrong. The Purple Heaven Divine Kingdom was not on good terms. Although it was well hidden, there was no such thing as an airtight wall. Let's see how long you can pretend. You will regret it. The heaven-shaking God Emperor thought that the Purple Heaven Divine Kingdom was pretending. The heaven-shaking God Emperor flung his sleeves and left. He had already thought of a way to deal with the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor. The Purple Heaven Divine Emperor sighed in relief when she saw the heaven-shaking God Emperor leave. She was not afraid of fighting the heaven-shaking God Emperor. She was afraid that the heaven-shaking God Emperor would attack the lightning tribulation. If that happened, the lightning tribulation would become stronger and bring trouble to Yi Hao. She was most concerned about Yi Hao now. Chapter 610. Husband, you must be fine. Purple Heaven Supreme, God Emperor, looked at the lightning region anxiously. The current lightning dominion was only about 60 miles in radius. Purple Heaven God Emperor, you slut. Watch how this God Emperor will take care of you. This God Emperor will definitely make you enjoy yourself under my crotch. Heaven-shaking God Emperor swore in his heart as he turned back to look in the direction of the lightning region. Furthermore, it would be a great pleasure to have the Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor under him. He had only taken a glance at the Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor, and he had already reacted. He had already surpassed the peak martial god realm, and his self-control was very good. However, he couldn't control himself in front of the Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor. This showed how tempting the Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor was. The Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor identified the direction. He didn't go towards the Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor. Instead, he thought for a moment and flew towards the Void God Nation. He believed that the Void God Nation would be happy to destroy the Purple Heaven Supreme God Nation with him and share the Purple Heaven Supreme God Nation. If possible, he would try to rope in the Ink God Nation. Then, the Purple Heaven Supreme God Nation would be unable to escape. As for Yi Hao, he had completely forgotten about him. He was just an idiot who wanted to die. However, he couldn't help but admire Yi Hao for being able to summon the lightning region. When he was undergoing the lightning tribulation, he had deliberately suppressed his realm, and the lightning region was only 40 miles wide. Of course, the benefits were great. He was almost invincible in the same realm. As for the Zhun family, the most impressive lightning tribulation cultivator was only an ancestral patriarch. His lightning tribulation had a radius of 60 miles. Yi Hao's lightning region was exactly 100 miles wide. This was something that had never happened in the history of the Myriad Kingdom continent. He sensed a dangerous aura from Yi Hao. Therefore, if Yi Hao could successfully pass the lightning tribulation, he wouldn't give Yi Hao a chance to live. He would kill Yi Hao at all costs. However, to his surprise, Yi Hao was courting death. It was one thing for him not to properly transcend the lightning tribulation, but he even dared to rush into the lightning region. Did he really think that the lightning tribulation was his home and that he could play with it however he wanted? Therefore, in his opinion, Yi Hao was already a dead man. There was no need for him to worry too much. My son, I've avenged you, but I won't let it end like this. Heaven-shaking God Emperor clenched his fists tightly. This was because he had yet to achieve his goal, which was the origin source fragment. He guessed that the reason the Purple Heaven God Emperor was so protective of the Fire Dragon Empire must have something to do with the origin fragment. Otherwise, he couldn't think of anything else that could make the Purple Heaven God Emperor protect the Fire Dragon Empire so much. Therefore, he guessed that the Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor must have known about the origin source fragment. However, it was hard to tell who was stronger between him and the Purple Heaven Supreme God. Therefore, in order to obtain the origin source fragment, he did not mind asking for external help. He wanted to borrow the strength of others to deal with the Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for leveling up. The host is currently at the 8th rank. I've finally broken through. Hearing the system's voice, Yi Hao heaved a sigh of relief. It was clear that the duration of the breakthrough this time was much longer than the previous one. As Yi Hao's physical body became stronger, the damage caused by the lightning was not as easy as it had been at the beginning. Yi Hao could clearly feel that his physical body was much stronger than before. He had truly become stronger. Moreover, he did not need to use his martial power. Hiss! As his body recovered, the lightning struck him again. Although Yi Hao had been prepared for the pain, he still sucked in a breath of cold air. However, this time it was much stronger than before. This was because the damage to his physical body was much lighter than before. The number of times Yi Hao fainted was also much less than before. However, unsurprisingly, the time it took for his physical body to level up this time was many times longer. Yi Hao could only hope that his physical body would finish leveling up. This feeling was simply unbearable. After all, the power of the lightning had entered his body and wreaked havoc in every part of his body. Given the power of the lightning, it was not surprising that a peak martial god would be turned into ashes within a few breaths of time. Let the pain come more violently. Yi Hao looked at the lightning field and shouted loudly in a futile attempt to lessen the pain. Furthermore, he knew that the more damage the lightning field caused to his body, the faster the leveling up would be. After all, every second that passed was a second of torture that was worse than death. Yi Hao lay in the lightning field and allowed the lightning to strike him from all directions. Yi Hao looked up at the sky. His body was covered in blood, and he looked extremely miserable. Only the movement of Yi Hao's chest proved that he was still alive. Ding dong! Congratulations to the host for leveling up. The host is currently at the 9th rank. Cut the crap and recover quickly. When he heard the system's voice, Yi Hao knew that he had come back to life. A faint glow appeared around Yi Hao's body and isolated him from the power of the lightning. The black charred skin on Yi Hao's body, as well as the blood residue and a layer of dead skin, quickly fell off. Then, Yi Hao's white and tender skin was revealed. Yi Hao looked at his baby-like skin and couldn't help but sigh. This was because his skin would soon turn into a bloody mess. This is strange, Yi Hao muttered when he felt this strange feeling in his body. This time, his physical body was recovering unusually slowly. However, there was something strange in his body. Yi Hao knew that it wasn't his martial power, so he wanted to check it out. In the end, after his physical body had completely recovered, the power of the lightning from all directions attacked him again. I don't know if the power of the lightning below me can help me break through to the 10th rank. Yi Hao's thoughts were interrupted as he looked at the power of the lightning around him with melancholy. As of now, the power of the lightning was no longer able to tear his body apart instantly like it did at the beginning. A minute had already passed, and only a few charred wounds had appeared on his body. Host, you are now at the border of the lightning territory. If you move towards the center, the power of the lightning will become much stronger. Just as Yi Hao was worrying, the system spoke up like a timely rain. Oh! Upon hearing the system's words, Yi Hao was a little curious. The moment he entered the lightning territory, he was attacked by the violent lightning and couldn't move at all. How could he move forward? Moreover, in the lightning territory, there were purple lightning everywhere. How could he tell the direction? Fortunately, the damage caused by the lightning had decreased significantly, and he could move his body now. Yi Hao identified the direction and walked towards the place where the thunder was louder. He didn't move, but once he moved, it affected the wounds on his body, causing him to grimace in pain. I want to see how strong you are. Yi Hao determined the direction and started walking. He wanted to work hard for his physical body to reach the 10th rank. After all, if he missed this opportunity, he might not have another chance in the future. Chapter 6:11. What exactly is that? Yi Hao wanted to know what was in front of him because his vision was blocked. Yi Hao had already forgotten about the pain in his body. He only wanted to know what was in front of him. However, he had a feeling that anything that could be in the lightning region was definitely not ordinary. Although Yi Hao's cultivation level had surpassed that of a martial god, his speed was still very slow in the lightning region. Yi Hao took an hour to walk the short distance of 20 miles. Is that a Kirin? Qilin? Just when Yi Hao was exhausted, his eyes suddenly lit up. There was a purple Kirin lying in the lightning region. The purple Kirin was about 10 meters long, and it was sleeping. However, Yi Hao found it strange that there would be a Kirin in the lightning region. The pressure that the Kirin was emitting made Yi Hao's legs tremble. That's not right. This Kirin is formed by lightning. Yi Hao observed carefully and was surprised. However, he immediately became curious. If the Kirin was formed by lightning, was it alive? Did it have any offensive power? However, what happened next gave him an answer. Rumble. The Kirin, who had suddenly fallen asleep, opened its eyes. In an instant, the lightning around the Qilin began to rumble and roar like a wild beast. Then, the Kirin stood up and looked at Yi Hao. As the Kirin stood up, the roar became louder. The loud roar shook Yi Hao's eardrums and made him feel a splitting headache. He couldn't help but frown. Oh no! Although Yi Hao felt a sense of danger, Yi Hao knew that the situation was bad and immediately hid to the side. Needless to say, there was only one Kirin in the lightning region. The Kirin was the only one that could make him feel a sense of danger. Gasp! This, Yi Hao was stunned. He had already run for his life. However, he realized that the Kirin had appeared in front of him silently and was about to hit him with its huge palm. Immediately, he felt a powerful force landing on his body. Yi Hao could not help but gasp. Because of the Qilin's attack, Yi Hao found that his chest was badly mutilated, as if he had been struck by lightning. Seeing that his chest was badly mutilated, the pain on Yi Hao's face didn't disappear. He smiled and rushed towards the Kirin. Qilin did not hold back and continued to attack Yi Hao. Yi Hao was hit again and was sent flying. Yi Hao ignored his worsening injury and continued to repeat the same action. Meanwhile, Qilin was also impatiently attacking Yi Hao. The man and the beast both repeated their actions. After an unknown amount of time, Yi Hao felt that it was difficult for him to even stand up. If this continued, he would probably die. However, he was still unwilling to give up because he had a feeling that his body was about to break through. The reason why he had ordered the Qilin to attack him without any regard for his own life was because of the Qilin. That was because the surrounding lightning could not cause too much damage to him. Hence, he had his eyes on Qilin. Every time Qilin attacked, it would use the power of lightning. Moreover, the power of lightning was much purer than the one he had to endure. Hence, Yi Hao had placed all his hopes on Qilin to break through his physical body. Because there were only two outcomes now. Either he died or he broke through his physical body. Yi Hao had a feeling that once he broke through, Qilin would definitely not be his match. At that time, he would be at his mercy. Come on! Yi Hao had no choice but to grit his teeth and drag his feet towards Qilin. Rumble! The deafening sound of lightning was still ringing in his ears. At this moment, Yi Hao was like a demon that had crawled out of hell. His body was covered in blood, and his flesh was badly mutilated. Qilin did not hold back and attacked Yi Hao again. Yi Hao was sent flying again like a kite with a broken string. Why haven't I leveled up? Yi Hao could not help but feel anxious when he did not hear the system's voice for a long time, because he could already feel that his consciousness was starting to become chaotic and he was about to fall into a coma. If he did not level up this time, he would really die here. As Yi Hao was sent flying, the friction between his body and the lightning was greater. The speed at which his body was being sliced was also faster than before. Am I really going to die? Now that he was only one step away, Yi Hao was really unwilling to give up. However, there was nothing he could do. This was a feeling of helplessness. Now that he was on the verge of death, his physical body would not level up. If he did not level up, he would die. However, whether his physical body level up or not required an opportunity. He cannot control it. Ding dong. Congratulations to the host for breaking through his physical body. The host is currently at the peak of the 10th rank. Huh! Hearing the system's voice, Yi Hao immediately shouted in joy. Because at this moment, there was nothing else that could describe the joy of a person being reborn. Feeling his physical body starting to recover rapidly, Yi Hao knew that he was lucky and did not have to die. Damn, Qilin. Watch how I deal with you later. At this moment, Yi Hao said angrily. Although the Qilin had helped him break through his physical body, it had almost caused him to die. Yi Hao could only hope that his physical body would recover quickly so that he could take revenge and beat the Qilin down. Come on. After his physical body had fully recovered, Yi Hao looked at the Qilin with a relaxed expression. The Qilin seemed to be able to see Yi Hao's provocation and was instantly enraged. The lightning around it also started to rumble. This was the Qilin's anger. Come on, I'm afraid of you. At the beginning, Yi Hao really could not see clearly how the Qilin moved and attacked him. Now, he finally saw clearly that the Qilin was formed by lightning. In this lightning territory, it was as if it had merged into one and could change its position at will. Fortunately, the Qilin and the lightning territory were not really one. Yi Hao could still see the Qilin's position clearly. Yi Hao aimed at the Qilin, clenched his fist, and attacked the Qilin directly. Sensational. Rumble, ka-cha-cha. Suddenly, a violent collision sound was heard, followed by the roar of lightning. I can't attack it. This time, Yi Hao did not suffer at all from the collision with the Qilin. His physical body was not injured at all. At this moment, Yi Hao finally knew how strong the physical body of a rank 10 perfect realm warrior was. Other things aside, when his physical body was at rank 9, the Qilin could beat him up badly. Now that his physical body was upgraded, even the Qilin could not do anything to him. But at the same time, Yi Hao realized that his attack did not have much effect on the Qilin. This was because his attack, which had been ready to attack, was like attacking cotton on the Qilin's body. It did not cause any damage to the Qilin. It was just that the Qilin's body collapsed and reformed in the blink of an eye. Chapter 6:12. Yi Hao was shocked and looked at the Kirin carefully. However, the Kirin had already returned to normal. However, when the Kirin collapsed, Yi Hao vaguely saw a purple pearl in the Kirin's position. I want to see what it is. Yi Hao relied on his strong physical body, so he wasn't afraid of the Kirin. He clenched his fists and charged forward. Rumble. Yi Hao punched the Kirin's body again. Then, the Kirin's body collapsed. There is indeed something strange, although the Kirin recovered abnormally fast this time. However, Yi Hao saw clearly that there was a pearl in the Kirin's position. A pearl that appeared in a lightning territory was definitely not an ordinary pearl. It had to be a treasure. Yi Hao was overjoyed. He was determined to get the pearl. Let's see how fast you can condense it. Looking at the Kirin that had reformed, Yi Hao made up his mind and began to increase the speed of his attacks. This time, Yi Hao didn't stop. He threw thousands of punches and a void appeared in front of him. There was still a trace of lightning power. The lightning all rolled in all directions. Now, the continuous attacks had indeed affected the condensation of the lightning. Yi Hao saw that the Kirin hadn't reformed, so he reached out to grab the purple pearl in the void. However, the moment he grabbed the pearl, the strange power that had appeared in his body suddenly went berserk. Swoosh! Just as Yi Hao was puzzled, the pearl in his hand seemed to be attracted by something and shot into his body. Ding dong! Congratulations to the host for obtaining the power of lightning. At this moment, the system's notification suddenly sounded. What? Hearing the system's notification, Yi Hao was afraid that he had heard wrongly. After all, the power of lightning was the most difficult power in nature to control. If one had to compare the power of martial arts, the power of lightning would probably be better. Yi Hao knew that he had really obtained a treasure. Yi Hao sensed his body and realized that his energy center was filled with martial arts power. And in the middle of this martial power, a small Qilin appeared. Although the Qilin was small, it occupied quite a bit of space. Around the Qilin, there was only a faint layer of lightning energy. Yi Hao finally knew what the inexplicable power that had appeared in his body previously was. In order to find out if he could use thunder and lightning, Yi Hao had already sensed that the Qilin in his dantian was using the power of thunder and lightning as if it was using martial arts. Whoosh! At this moment, a lightning bolt as thick as a strand of hair appeared on Yi Hao's finger. Seeing this scene, Yi Hao immediately blushed with shame. After all, what could this little bit of lightning do? It would probably only be able to deal with some ants. If martial artists of the same level saw this, wouldn't they laugh their heads off? This lightning bolt was at least as thick as a baby's arm. Only then would it be able to harm the enemy. Then, Yi Hao looked at the lightning around him. For some reason, the lightning around him had shrunk significantly. The current lightning dominion was only less than 10 miles in radius. But to Yi Hao, it was still very tempting. It would be great if I could take this lightning for my own use. Yi Hao murmured to himself. As if it had heard Yi Hao's words, the light purple Qilin in his body suddenly opened its eyes. The thunder and lightning within a radius of less than 10 miles suddenly surged toward Yi Hao as if it had met a vacuum cleaner. Could it really be possible? Seeing this scene, Yi Hao immediately laughed. He was just saying it. He didn't expect the qilin in his body to be so powerful that it could actually help him absorb the power of thunder and lightning. At this moment, his body was like a bottomless pit that was crazily devouring the power of thunder and lightning. Yi Hao focused his attention on his dantian. He realized that the light purple qilin's color was gradually deepening. It was growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Awesome! Yi Hao couldn't help but shout when he saw the lightning bolts crazily surging into his dantian. After all, as long as the lightning entered his body, he would be able to control it and turn it into his own power. This was the most violent force in the natural world. How could he not be excited? Look, the Thunder Dominion is shrinking. What happened in the Thunder Dominion? Could it be that Yanlong's young emperor failed to pass the tribulation? The Thunder Tribulation is dissipating. That's probably the case. I told you that the kid was reckless. Look at what happened to him now. Did he really think he was invincible? He even dared to ignore the lightning. Great. The onlookers standing outside the Thunder Dominion looked at the rapidly shrinking Thunder Dominion and were all talking at once. But there were also people who frowned and looked at the Thunder Dominion in confusion. This was because the words of those people before could deceive those who had not passed the Thunder Tribulation. But it was absolutely impossible to deceive those who had passed the Thunder Tribulation. This was because they all knew that after the Thunder Tribulation, the Thunder Dominion would directly dissipate from heaven and earth. But the Thunder Dominion in front of them was obviously different. The Thunder Dominion was crazily converging in the middle. They didn't understand what was in the middle of the Thunder Dominion that could cause such a change in the Thunder Dominion. Will there be a treasure appearing? Someone blurted out all of a sudden. Although he didn't mean it, his words were actually quite meaningful. Many people's eyes lit up with greed as they stared at the Thunder Dominion. Because the Thunder Dominion was full of mysteries, it was not impossible for there to be a treasure. At this moment, a war was about to break out. All the powerhouses stared at the Thunder Dominion and were also on guard against the powerhouses around them. After all, the Lightning Dominion had never appeared in the Myriad Kingdom continent before. How could the treasure produced by the Thunder Dominion be ordinary? The Purple Heaven Divine Emperor also stared at the Thunder Dominion. She didn't desire any treasure. She was only concerned about how Yi Hao was doing. She glanced contemptuously at the greedy powerhouses around her and snorted in her heart. If something happened to Yi Hao, if there was a treasure in the Thunder Dominion, it would belong to the Fire Dragon Empire. Whoever dared to fight for it, don't blame her for being impolite. Look, there is someone in the Thunder Dominion. At this moment, the atmosphere was extremely tense. Suddenly, someone pointed in the direction of the Thunder Dominion and shouted. Everyone immediately looked in the direction of the Thunder Dominion. They couldn't imagine how there could be someone in the Thunder Dominion. It's young Emperor Yanlong. He's not dead yet. At this moment, someone suddenly shouted, "Impossible! How can young Emperor Yanlong still be alive?" Hearing that person's words, everyone was shocked. As a result, everyone looked at Yi Hao and was stunned. The person standing in the direction of the Thunder Dominion was undoubtedly Yi Hao. At this moment, the shock in everyone's heart could no longer be described with words. That was the Thunder Dominion, 100 miles Thunder Dominion. Not only did he not die, but he also came out unscathed. No matter how they thought about it, it felt like a fantasy story, because the Thunder Dominion was an absolute nightmare for all martial artists. Chapter 613. This kid definitely has a treasure on him. Otherwise, it would be impossible for anyone to enter the Thunder territory unscathed. Hearing this, all the experts agreed and looked at Yi Hao greedily. No matter what, Yi Hao's treasure was not afraid of lightning. It was a divine weapon that could help him pass the tribulation. Didn't that mean that with Yi Hao's treasure, they would not have to be afraid of the Thunder tribulation in the future and their lives would not be in danger? Perhaps most of the experts present did not need this treasure, as they had already broken through to the martial god realm and had passed the Thunder tribulation. However, their future generations needed it. Their subordinates needed it. Their forces needed it. If martial artists did not have to be afraid of the thunder tribulation, they could suppress their cultivation level and wait for the thunder tribulation. That would be a great benefit. At the same time, they could also create a group of experts. At that moment, all the experts were staring greedily at Yi Hao. However, no one made a move, as the Purple Sky Supreme God was present. If it had not been for the Purple Sky Supreme God, they would have already made a move. Furthermore, they knew that the hunter would shoot the bird that stuck out. No one wanted to be the first to step forward. "Husband, you are fine. That's great." Seeing Yi Hao standing in the air, the Purple Sky Supreme God was as happy as a little girl. The Purple Sky Supreme God immediately flew to Yi Hao's side and said, "Husband, you really scared me. Aren't I fine?" Seeing the Purple Sky Supreme God's concerned expression, Yi Hao said gently as he held the Purple Sky Supreme God's hand, "Brothers, are you willing to let this kid take the treasure for himself? If you don't act now, you won't have another chance." A peak martial god shouted greedily. He was trying to arouse everyone's desire so that all the experts would take action. When the time came, he would be able to fish in troubled waters. As he expected, many martial god realm experts became restless upon hearing his words. Some even took out their weapons secretly. "Husband, let me take care of these greedy guys." The Purple Sky Supreme God frowned unhappily when he heard the martial god's words. He looked at the martial god and said unhappily, "There's no need for you to do such a small thing." Yi Hao smiled and patted Purple Heaven Divine Emperor's hand. He then glanced at the peak martial god realm expert coldly. "Tell me, how do you want to die?" "Humph. What kind of man are you, hiding behind a woman?" The martial god said to Yi Hao in disdain as he looked at the Purple Sky Supreme God in fear. Right now, he was only afraid of the Purple Heaven Divine Lord. If the Purple Heaven Divine Lord was not here, he would have taken care of Yi Hao by himself. "Then I'll let you have a taste of my physical body." After Yi Hao finished speaking, he rushed towards the martial god. Yi Hao's attack on the martial god was purely barehanded. He did not use any martial power. "You're courting death." The martial god couldn't help feeling delighted when he saw that Yi Hao dared to attack him barehanded without using any martial power. The martial arts god circulated his martial arts power and gathered it on his palm. Immediately, a powerful martial arts aura spread out. The martial god realm expert cultivation made the onlookers take a few steps back. Young Emperor Yanlong is really arrogant. He even dares to challenge a peak martial god realm expert. Many people looked at Yi Hao with admiration. Their eyes were filled with admiration. However, there were even more people who looked at Yi Hao with disdain. He needs to have a right to be arrogant. He is just digging his own grave. I wonder what kind of treasure he used to overcome the lightning tribulation. He really thinks he is invincible. He even dares to fight a peak martial god realm expert. Sigh. Young people are young. I really don't know what they are thinking. While the crowd was talking, the fists of the two men had already collided. The martial god realm expert's fists were filled with powerful martial power. On the other hand, Yi Hao's fists were ordinary. There was no martial power to be seen, as if they were ordinary people. The crowd could tell who was stronger and who was weaker at a glance. When the Purple Sky Supreme God saw this, her heart skipped a beat. She realized that even when she was the Purple Sky Supreme God, her emotions had never changed. She was always worried when she was with Yi Hao. The Purple Sky Supreme God was ready to save Yi Hao at any time. As for the surrounding experts, they were ready to make a move. They were planning to rob Yi Hao of his treasures after Yi Hao was killed. In the blink of an eye, the two fists had already collided. There was no sound of collision at all. As the crowd was confused, the peak martial god realm expert's arm was smashed into pieces and sent flying in all directions. Meanwhile, the peak martial god realm expert fainted and was sent flying. Die! Yi Hao moved and threw a punch at the peak martial god realm expert's head. The peak martial god realm expert's head exploded like a watermelon. Thud! Following it, the peak martial god realm expert's corpse fell to the ground. Powerful! At this moment, everyone was dumbfounded. There was only one word in their minds. The reason being that Yi Hao did not use any of his power throughout the battle. He had almost instantly killed the peak martial God Realm expert. This was pure physical strength. If one were to ask, how many people present here would be able to achieve such a feat? Yi Hao clapped his hands and glanced around. Who else is there? Bring it on. I promise I won't use any martial arts force. Hearing Yi Hao's words, no one dared to step forward. They all backed away uncontrollably. How could his body be so strong? Could it be that he used all of his lightning power to temper his body? He killed a peak martial God Realm expert with a single punch. How strong is his body? I guess no one in the 10,000 Kingdoms continent is a match for him. Seeing Yi Hao standing beside the peak martial God Realm expert's corpse, everyone's eyes were filled with fear. I'm no match for him without using any secret skills. How could he grow so fast? Is he still human? The Purple Heaven Divine Emperor looked at Yi Hao with some relief. Fortunately, she had become Yi Hao's woman. If she was still Yi Hao's enemy, it would be terrifying. Yi Hao's heaven-defying growth speed could only be described as monstrous. After observing the power of Yi Hao's punch, she knew that if she did not use the secret skills of the Purple Heaven Divine Kingdom, she would not be able to fight against Yi Hao. Of course, the secret skills were not so easy to use. All the secret skills were martial arts techniques that hurt the enemy but also hurt the user. They would only be used when there was no other choice. It seems that the 10,000 Kingdoms continent is going to change. Looking at the majestic Yi Hao, who seemed to have the world under his feet, the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor thought. At the thought of the heaven-shaking Emperor, the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor felt sad for him. Rumble. At this moment, an explosion came from the distant sky. Yi Hao looked up and saw a blood-red word appear in the sky. Kill. The word almost occupied the northern sky. The powerful aura emitted from the word shook people's hearts and souls. A sense of fear grew from the bottom of their hearts. Chapter 614. That's the God-punishing command of the endless divine nation. Something big must have happened once the command is issued. It hasn't been issued for tens of thousands of years. I didn't expect to be lucky enough to see it today. I don't know who the God-punishing command is targeting, but no matter who it is, they will fight to the death. Looks like the Myriad Kingdom continent is going to fall into chaos. Yi Hao listened quietly to the discussions around him. He didn't know about anything else, but he knew that the endless divine nation was a divine nation. They wouldn't let such a big commotion go so easily. However, what made him curious was who the endless darkness divine nation had issued the God-punishing command to. It shouldn't be him, because he had no relationship with the endless divine nation. Whoosh, at this moment, a blood-red spear that was thousands of meters long soared into the sky. Heaven-shaking divine nation's blood spear command. Upon seeing the several thousand zhang long crimson spear, everyone's attention was drawn to it once more. The blood spear command was the heaven-shaking divine nation's command. It had the same effect as the endless divine nation's God-punishing command. Seeing the two divine nations issue the command at almost the same time, everyone started guessing. Do you think the endless divine nation and the heaven-shaking divine nation are going to fight? No. Look at where the blood spear is pointing. Everyone immediately looked in the direction the blood spear was pointing. Because the blood spear was pointing in the direction the heaven-shaking divine nation was going to attack. What nation is that? Many people asked in confusion as they looked in the direction the spear was pointing. Those who knew looked at the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor with complicated expressions. Yi Hao's heart skipped a beat when he saw the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor's cold expression. Yi Hao didn't understand. If the heaven-shaking Divine Emperor wanted to attack, he should attack the Fire Dragon Empire. Why would he attack the Purple Heaven Divine Nation? Yi Hao walked to the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor's side and said, "Don't worry. With me here, no one can hurt the Purple Heaven Divine Nation." The Purple Heaven Divine Emperor looked at Yi Hao's gentle and determined eyes and nodded. But she still felt very conflicted. She didn't expect the heaven-shaking divine nation to ally with the endless divine nation. At first, She thought that the heaven-shaking God Emperor would at most contact her imperial aunt. That way, he wouldn't be able to pose a threat to her. But now it was different. This was an alliance of two divine kingdoms. Her confidence instantly crumbled, because the Violet Sky Divine Kingdom's strength was enough to deal with a divine kingdom. However, dealing with two divine kingdoms was akin to courting death. What she was more worried about now was that there was still no movement from the Divine Ink Nation. Would the Divine Ink Nation also be roped in by the sky, shaking God Dynasty? If the three dynasties were to join forces, the Violet Sky Divine Kingdom would no longer be able to survive. Rumble. At this moment, a pitch-black Mia appeared in the sky. It's over. Purple Heaven Divine Emperor's heart sank when he saw the pitch-black word, because this was the Ink God Kingdom's attack order. She did not expect that the three divine kingdoms would really join forces. This time, the Violet Heaven Divine Kingdom was probably doomed. Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor looked serious. She guessed that the Purple Heaven Divine Kingdom must be in an uproar right now. Indeed, in a short while, her voice transmission talisman and emergency voice transmission talisman received news one after another. Husband, I would like to make a trip back to the Violet Heaven Divine Kingdom. Zetian looked at Yi Hao and said anxiously. When he saw Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor pointing at him anxiously, Yi Hao felt his heart ache. Don't worry, I will go back with you. Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor wanted to reject, but when she saw Yi Hao's eyes, she could not bear to do so. She could only agree. Li Hong, take care of the matters in the Guanyu Empire. I will go out for a while. Yi Hao turned around and said to his ministers. Yi Hao was just about to leave when he saw a group of experts who had been eyeing him covetously. Now they looked like little kittens. He said sternly, if you dare to do anything to me, Yin Long, don't blame me for being ruthless. When Yi Hao finished speaking, a flash of lightning appeared on his finger and shot at the peak martial god's corpse. The corpse instantly turned into nothingness. Yi Hao's sudden attack instantly stupefied everyone. What was that? Don't tell me it was lightning. That's impossible. How can a human control lightning? I'm not dreaming, am I? Is he even human? Someone can actually control lightning. This is simply terrifying. The crowd looked at the pitch-black ground. Even though they did not want to believe that Yi Hao could use lightning, there was nothing they could do. At that moment, everyone's fear of Yi Hao increased significantly. Not only was his physical body strong, but he could also use lightning power. Such a powerful existence was standing right in front of them. When they thought about how they had wanted to take advantage of Yi Hao, they felt a lingering fear. They now felt that Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor was not that scary. On the contrary, Yi Hao was much scarier than Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor. Even Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor was shocked when she saw Yi Hao use lightning. How many secrets did her little husband have? This was not the first time Yi Hao had come to Purple Heaven Divine Kingdom. However, last time, he had only entered Purple Heaven City and not the Imperial Palace. This time, with Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor leading the way, Yi Hao entered the Imperial Palace of Purple Heaven Divine Kingdom without any obstructions. Your Majesty, you are finally back. I don't know why the three divine dynasties suddenly attacked us. As soon as he entered the Imperial Palace, a group of ministers surrounded him and said anxiously. The ministers looked at Yi Hao, who was standing beside Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor. They could not help but take a second look at Yi Hao. However, they did not take him seriously. Of course, Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor knew the reason for this. It was related to Yi Hao. However, she could not reveal the truth in front of everyone. Otherwise, these people would definitely cause trouble for Yi Hao. They might even capture Yi Hao and send him to the three divine dynasties to resolve the crisis. I guess the three divine dynasties think that our Purple Heaven Divine Kingdom is too easy to bully. Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor did not mention Yi Hao. Instead, she said coldly, Your Majesty, what should we do? Should we send someone to negotiate? Hearing Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor's words, the ministers did not have any doubts. Instead, they asked anxiously. After all, the three divine dynasties were besieging them. The Purple Heaven Divine Kingdom was completely at a disadvantage. If they could not find a good solution, the Purple Heaven Divine Kingdom could very well be destroyed. Purple Heaven Supreme, God Emperor, looked at Yi Hao. She wanted to ask for Yi Hao's opinion. Ma, Yi Hao, what do you think about this? If they don't bully me, I won't bully them. If they bully me, I will return the favor tenfold, Yi Hao said in a deep voice. Originally, Yi Hao had attracted everyone's attention by following behind Purple Heaven Supreme, God Emperor. However, due to Purple Heaven Supreme, God Emperor's presence, the ministers did not dare to ask. However, Yi Hao dared to say such a thing at this time. Although it sounded domineering, he needed to have the ability to back it up. Therefore, Yi Hao's words naturally attracted the displeasure of many people. Young man, don't talk big. Be careful not to bite your tongue. Return the favor tenfold? The enemy is 3 times stronger than us. Even staying alive is a problem. How can we return the favor? Chapter 6:15. I think what the young man said makes sense. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If people offend me, I'll pay them back tenfold. At that moment, a woman's voice was heard. A graceful and elegant woman walked out from behind the crowd. Her demeanor was dignified, but everyone looked at her with respect. Greetings, Imperial Aunt. Everyone bowed respectfully when they saw her. Mother. Yi Hao immediately sent a voice transmission when he saw the Imperial Aunt. My son, why are you here with the Purple Sky, Supreme God Emperor? The Imperial Aunt frowned and asked in confusion. She had just received news that the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor had brought a young man back to the palace. She didn't think much of it. After all, in this moment of life and death in the Violet Sky Divine Kingdom, personal grudges were no longer important. The most important thing was to overcome the difficulties ahead with the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor. However, when she saw that the young man was Yi Hao, she was stunned. She had thought that Yi Hao had been captured by the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor, but after observing for a while, she realized that it didn't seem like it. The Imperial Aunt couldn't help but step forward when everyone was in danger of her son. It's a long story. When we have time, I'll tell you in detail. At a time like this, how could Yi Hao not tell his mother that he had slept with the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor? He didn't know if his mother would believe him if he said it, but she would definitely be shocked. Therefore, he had to tell her slowly. He couldn't rush it. The current problem was to solve the problem of the Purple Sky Supreme God Kingdom. Imperial Aunt, do you have a good plan for this siege by the 3 divine dynasties? Many officials looked at the Imperial Aunt. After all, she was one of the leaders of the Purple Sky Supreme God Kingdom. Therefore, at this critical moment, the Imperial Aunt's suggestion couldn't be ignored. The 3 divine dynasties think that the Purple Sky Supreme God Kingdom is easy to bully. We have to fight with all our strength, the Imperial Aunt said in a low voice. After all, as Yi Hao's mother, she had to protect her son's reputation. If it had been before, she might have thought about it carefully and come up with a comprehensive plan. However, this group of people dared to talk bad about her son. She had to support her son. Imperial Aunt. Everyone was deeply surprised. They didn't expect that the Imperial Aunt's suggestion would be biased towards Yi Hao. Everyone looked anxiously at Purple Heaven Divine Emperor. They could only place their hopes on him. After all, everyone knew that the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor and the Imperial Aunt were not on good terms. Now that the Imperial Aunt had expressed her stance, the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor would most likely do the opposite. As long as the Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor disagreed with the Royal Aunt's suggestion, then there would be no need to fight the 3 dynasties. If the Violet Sky Divine Kingdom were to fight against the 3 divine dynasties, they would not be able to gain any advantage at all. I also support a battle, Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor said. After all, Yi Hao was her man. She had to support her man. What? Everyone felt as if they had misheard. They all stared at Purple Heaven Divine Emperor, dumbfounded. They did not understand what was wrong with the Purple Heaven Supreme God and the Imperial Aunt. This was simply too abnormal. Knowing that he was going to lose, why didn't he ask for a truce? Instead, he insisted on fighting. Why did the Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor and the Imperial Ant treat this battle as a game? They couldn't accept it. If the Purple Heaven Divine Kingdom only needed to fight against one Divine Kingdom, they would definitely support it without hesitation. However, they were going against 3 Divine Kingdoms. The 3 Divine Kingdoms represented almost all the remaining forces in the Myriad Kingdom continent. In other words, the Purple Heaven Divine Kingdom was going against the entire Myriad Kingdom continent. How could they agree to a battle with such a great disparity in strength? At this moment, everyone couldn't help but look at Yi Hao. They had never seen this young man before. They realized that whether it was the Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor or the Imperial Ant, they seemed to be biased towards Yi Hao. They were very curious about who Yi Hao was. However, more people looked at Yi Hao with increasing displeasure. In their opinion, without Yi Hao, the Imperial Ant and the Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor would not have made such a decision. Therefore, in their opinion, Yi Hao was the culprit. I think this young man is a dragon among men. I don't know what countermeasures you have to help our Purple Heaven Divine Kingdom repel the enemy. No one dared to go against the Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor and the Imperial Ant. At this moment, they could only make things difficult for Yi Hao. They wanted to give Yi Hao some bitter meat to eat. I don't have any countermeasures. I can help you take the lead, Yi Hao said without thinking much. After all, this was his woman and his mother's country. No matter what, he had to help. Shameless boasting. Hearing Yi Hao's words, someone immediately said, "You want to take the lead? Don't go up and get killed. You'll be a disgrace." Many people looked at Yi Hao mockingly. They were full of contempt and disdain for Yi Hao. After all, no matter how strong Yi Hao was, how strong could he be? Could he be stronger than Qian Huang or the devouring demon god? After all, Yi Hao was still young. In their eyes, Yi Hao was just a little kid. However, if they knew that Yi Hao had attracted lightning from the Thunder region, which had a radius of 100 miles, they would not dare to treat Yi Hao so lightly. If they knew that Yi Hao had killed a peak martial god with his bare hands, they would not dare to be arrogant in front of Yi Hao. If they knew that Yi Hao could use lightning, how would they feel? However, they did not know, and no one had told them. Therefore, at this moment, they looked down on Yi Hao. If the Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor and the Imperial Ant were not here, they would have drawn their swords and attacked Yi Hao. Even so, there were still many people who were looking at Yi Hao with sinister gazes. "Father, you are back." At this moment, a pleasant female voice was suddenly heard. "Greetings, eldest princess." The crowd immediately made way for Zi Xing'er and bowed to her. "You, Yi." Just as Zi Xing'er was about to bow to the Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor, she suddenly saw Yi Hao standing to the side and was stunned. Zi Xing'er immediately looked at the Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor and wanted to remind him. However, before she could speak, the Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor said, "Xing'er, how is your cultivation level?" Zi Xing'er was stunned by the Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor's sudden interruption. She looked at the Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor's eyes and understood that he had deliberately interrupted her. Zi Xing'er did not understand why the Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor was protecting Yi Hao at this time. Didn't the Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor want to kill Yi Hao the most? Why was he not attacking now? Could it be that the Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor still did not know Yi Hao's true identity? Or could it be that the Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor saw that the Imperial Ant was here and deliberately did not want her to reveal Yi Hao's identity? Chapter 6:16. I know. Purple Heaven Supreme God looked displeased as he replied coldly. Noticing the change in Purple Heaven Supreme God's mood, Zi Xing'er was even more confused. Didn't Purple Heaven Supreme God want to kill Yi Hao the most in the past? Now that he knew that Yi Hao was beside him, why did he not react at all? Instead, he looked displeased. Although Zi Xing'er did not understand, she did not dare to provoke Purple Heaven Supreme God. So, she stood aside obediently. With the cooperation of the Purple Sky God Emperor and the Royal Ant, the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom was set up in full swing. Due to the disparity in power between the Purple Heaven Supreme God Kingdom and the Purple Heaven Supreme God Kingdom, they retreated all their men to the back in preparation for a decisive battle. However, Purple Heaven Supreme God Kingdom still had a backup plan. He sent Xing to lead some experts and geniuses out of the Purple Heaven Supreme God Kingdom. In Purple Heaven Supreme God Kingdom's opinion, even if the Purple Heaven Supreme God Kingdom was destroyed, as long as Xing was around, the Purple Heaven Supreme God Kingdom's roots would still be there. As long as the roots were there, the kingdom would rise again one day. It was obvious that Purple Heaven Supreme God Kingdom did not have much hope in this war and had already prepared for the worst. Later, under Yi Hao's insistence, Purple Heaven Supreme God Kingdom, Imperial Ant, and Yi Hao led their men to fight against the three God Kingdoms. Soldiers, this is Commander Yi. He is in charge of leading the 72 legions. You will follow his orders in the future. Purple Heaven Supreme God Kingdom was worried and led Yi Hao to the legions to introduce him to the various legions. These legion commanders were all peak martial gods. Each one of them was an expert against several martial artists of the same level. Each legion was made up of 3,000 martial sages. Every 100 martial sages were led by a martial god kingdom's squad leader. These were the elites of the Purple Heaven Supreme God Kingdom. As for warriors below the martial sage realm, they were not qualified to participate in a war of this level. This was because in a war between martial gods, even martial sages would be reduced to cannon fodder. As for warriors below the martial sage realm, there was no need to even mention them. Damn, where did this kid come from? He hasn't even weaned yet, and he wants to lead us? I've heard that there's a reckless brat who is well taken care of by His Majesty and Imperial Ant. But isn't it too childish to directly lead us? Other than Ziba, I won't submit to anyone else. Upon hearing Ziba's name, everyone turned to look at a muscular man who was about 2 meters tall and wearing purple armor. The burly man with a full beard stared sharply at Yi Hao, standing among the crowd. He made people feel like he was a crane among chickens. This person was Ziba. Ziba's cultivation had reached the peak martial god realm. When he was undergoing the tribulation with a circumference of 50 li had strengthened his flesh. Relying on Ziba's cultivation, he could defeat 10 experts of the same level by himself. Once, Ziba was provoked by 3 legion generals. In the end, the 3 legion generals were beaten up by Ziba until they cried for their parents. Ziba's cultivation might not be the strongest in the Violet Sky Divine Kingdom, but it was enough to rank in the top 20. Therefore, Ziba was deeply respected by everyone. Therefore, in the eyes of the crowd, Ziba would definitely be the one leading the battle. However, the Violet Sky Divine Emperor had suddenly told them that their leader was not Ziba, but a brat. How could they accept this? Your Majesty, I'm not convinced. One of the Legion generals spoke up. I'm not convinced either. After the Legion generals spoke up, the rest of the Legion generals spoke up as well. Although Ziba did not speak, the dissatisfaction in his eyes was self-evident. The Violet Sky Divine Emperor looked troubled. She had been afraid that these people would not be convinced, so she had personally appointed Yi Hao to the position. However, she had not expected that even if she was present, it would not work. Most importantly, when the battle was about to begin, she had to win the hearts of the people. She could not disappoint them, and her attitude could not be too tough. Otherwise, the result would be the opposite of what she wanted. The Violet Sky Divine Emperor looked at Yi Hao with a troubled expression. When Yi Hao saw that the crowd was not convinced, he said, "What do I have to do to convince you? If you want us to be convinced, show us your strength first." That's right. As long as you can defeat any one of us, we will listen to your orders. How about it? Do you dare to compete in front of the 72 legions? Many of the legion generals looked at Yi Hao provocatively. They did not take Yi Hao seriously at all. "You, big guy, come and fight with me." Yi Hao leaped onto the arena when he heard everyone's words, and he pointed at Ziba, who stood out from the crowd. "What did you say?" Seeing Yi Hao pointing at him and calling him big guy, he did not take him seriously at all. Ziba's eyes were wide open, and he looked furious. "Roar, roar, roar." Legion Commander Ziba, kill this arrogant brat. Ha ha, this brat is useless. How dare he provoke Ziba and call him big guy? How many punches do you think this brat can take from Ziba? Can he take 10? 10. I think 3 punches will be enough. Brat, I want you to kowtow and admit your mistake. Ziba did not pay attention to the discussions of the crowd. He clenched his huge fist and attacked Yi Hao. Legion Commander Ziba is so domineering. Legion Commander Ziba, go easy on him. Don't kill this reckless brat. Legion Commander, Legion Commander, Legion Commander. At that moment, all the Legion commanders and soldiers were shouting excitedly. The atmosphere was instantly ignited. Purple Heaven Supreme God looked at Yi Hao with concern. She was not worried about Yi Hao. Instead, she was worried that Yi Hao would be too heavy-handed and injure Ziba. If Ziba was injured, then it would definitely have an adverse effect on the following battle. She knew that Yi Hao was powerful. He had killed a peak martial god with his bare hands. Although the martial artist was not as powerful as Ziba, with Ziba's strength, it was impossible for him to kill a peak martial god instantly. Most importantly, she didn't know if Yi Hao had gone all out or not, or if Yi Hao had been holding back when he attacked. Moreover, Yi Hao had a special technique, thunder and lightning. Therefore, she was worried about Ziba. You're a little slow. Just as Ziba's huge body was about to hit Yi Hao's voice rang in Ziba's ears. Before Ziba could react, he felt a heavy blow on his back. How is this possible? Ziba did not expect that his attack would not land on Yi Hao. Instead, he was hit by Yi Hao's attack. If Yi Hao had used his weapon, the consequences would have been unimaginable. At the thought of this, Ziba's hair stood on end. At that moment, Ziba knew that he was no match for Yi Hao. Big guy, admit defeat. Yi Hao stood behind Ziba and did not want to hurt him. Impossible. Ziba was a person who cared about his reputation. If he lost so easily in front of the 72 legions, it would be too embarrassing. Chapter 617. Titan Strike. Ziba is actually using his ultimate move. How can this be? Is this kid really so strong? He actually forced Ziba to use the Titan Strike. It's over. Ziba will go berserk after using the Titan Strike and lose consciousness. Everyone quickly retreat. When the crowd saw Ziba use the Titan Strike, they were all shocked and retreated in fear. Ziba quickly stopped. Seeing Ziba use the Titan Strike, the Purple Sky Divine Emperor's face also changed. The Titan Strike was a fragment of the Purple Sky Divine Emperor Puppet's secret technique. Countless experts appraised it, but they could not see the level of the secret technique and could not cultivate it. Immediately, it was thrown into the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom's Library Palace. The Library Palace was the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom's largest storage of cultivation techniques and martial skills. It was specially used for the elites and meritorious officials of the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom to cultivate. After Ziba entered, he did not cultivate any other cultivation technique and instead chose the Titan Strike. In the beginning, he was also stopped by countless people. That was because cultivating this unknown cultivation method was useless. Instead of wasting time, he might as well cultivate other cultivation techniques. Moreover, this Titan Strike could not be cultivated at all. But what he didn't expect was that Ziba really succeeded in cultivating it. Moreover, during the selection of the Legion Commander, he relied on the Titan Strike to cause a sensation in the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom. At that time, Ziba was at a disadvantage. Just when everyone thought that Ziba was going to lose, Ziba suddenly used the Titan Strike. After using the Titan Strike, Ziba's body directly increased to more than 10 meters and directly turned into a big guy, like a giant. This was still considered fun. In addition to the increase in size, Ziba's strength also increased by 4 to 5 times. After the transformation, Ziba killed his opponent with a punch before the crowd could recover from the shock. But this was not the end. It seemed that because the cultivation technique was incomplete, or it was the side effect of the cultivation technique. After the transformation, Ba completely lost his mind and became a berserk moving fortress, attacking everyone he saw. After the transformation, Ba became incomparably strong. Even the strongest expert of the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom did not dare to face him directly. It was easy for the strongest expert of the Violet Sky Divine Kingdom to kill Ba, but it was extremely difficult to control Ba. Although Ba had become berserk, he still possessed a powerful fighting strength. How could the Violet Heaven Divine Kingdom bear to kill him? Therefore, they could only delay Ba and prevent him from injuring anyone. With Purple Tyrant's strength after transforming, it would definitely be a trump card on the battlefield. Fortunately, Ba's transformation time was limited. It only lasted for half an incense stick's worth of time. However, the consequences of the transformation were also disastrous. After Ba's transformation, his body had been weak for as long as a year. He had been bedridden for almost every day for a year. Now that Ba had transformed, the Purple Heaven God Emperor was truly afraid that something unexpected would happen. However, Ba had already transformed, and she had no way of stopping him. As for the people of the 72 legions, they all seemed to know how powerful Ba's transformation was. They all retreated in fear, afraid that Ba would lose his mind and hurt them. You can actually transform? Seeing Ba's transformation, Yihao was also deeply curious. However, when he saw Ba's violent eyes, he knew that Ba had lost consciousness. Yihao also did not expect Ba to have such a bad temper. He transformed at the slightest disagreement. Yihao, quickly leave this place and let him vent his anger. The Purple Heaven God Emperor had no other choice but to shout at Yihao. She was also not sure if Yihao was a match for Ba after his transformation. Whether or not he was, both sides would suffer great losses if he went up against Ba. At this moment, the experts in the Purple Heaven God Emperor's mystic realms seemed to have sensed Ba's situation and flew over. I'll let you sleep for a while. Seeing Ba's appearance, Yi did not want to hurt Ba and directly flew towards him. Damn it, the battle is imminent. Why did Ba use his secret skill? Where did this reckless brat come from? Quickly leave this place. At this moment, two old female experts flew over. When they saw the situation, they said anxiously. However, Yihao ignored them. His figure flashed and flew behind Ba's neck. He punched Ba's neck. After Ba was hit, his entire body stiffened. Then, like a small mountain, he fell forward with a loud bang. At this moment, everyone, including the two old women and the experts who flew over, were stunned. The originally noisy and chaotic scene instantly quieted down. Everyone looked at Yihao in shock. Even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard clearly. It was so quiet that it was frightening. What happened? Why did Ba suddenly fall? I don't know either. It seems like that brat did it. Oh my god, what did I just see? After Ba transformed, he was actually killed in an instant? You have to know that even the old ancestor could not do it. How'd this brat do it? The soldiers of the 72 legions were discussing in shock. Brat, what did you do to Ba? One of the old women who came saw Ba fall to the ground and immediately questioned Yihao. Hearing the old woman's question, Yihao could not help but frown. Seeing the old woman questioning Yihao, the Purple Sky Supreme God was anxious. She immediately stood up and said, "Third old ancestor, shut up. I have something to ask you later." The third old ancestor did not give the Purple Sky Supreme God a chance to speak and said sternly, "Where did this crow come from? Her voice is so piercing." Yihao was originally unhappy that the third old ancestor was questioning him. However, he did not expect the third old ancestor's attitude to be so bad. She even dared to question the Purple Sky Supreme God. One had to know that the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor was his woman. How could an old woman question him as she pleased? If the third old ancestor had been friendly, Yihao could have explained to her. However, the third old ancestor's attitude had angered Yihao. Hearing Yihao's words, the Purple Sky Supreme God's expression changed drastically. Although she was unhappy with the third old ancestor taking advantage of her seniority, but who asked the other party's seniority and strength to be there. She had no choice but to respect him. However, Yi Hao had scolded the third old ancestor in public. The third old ancestor would definitely feel humiliated and fly into a rage. She would definitely make a big fuss about it. This kid is really bold. He actually did not give the third old ancestor any face. I feel like I'm a little impressed by this kid. That's right. My legs tremble in front of the third old ancestor. This kid still dares to scold the third old ancestor. I have to admire him. The people of the 72 legions looked at Yi Hao strangely. The third old ancestor's face darkened. She had not expected that someone would dare to talk back to her in the purple sky's supreme god kingdom. Die. The third old ancestor's eyes were filled with murderous intent. She had already sentenced Yi Hao to death in her heart. Third old ancestor, don't do anything. The second old ancestor of the purple sky supreme god kingdom immediately spoke up to stop the third old ancestor. However, the third old ancestor would not listen to him. She only wanted to kill Yi Hao to vent the anger in her heart. Chapter 618. Get down on the ground. When Yi Hao saw the third old ancestor attacking him, he did not hold back and slapped her. Before anyone could react, the third old ancestor was already lying on the ground. The third old ancestor, who was lying on the ground, felt a burning pain on her face. She was dumbfounded. What happened? Everyone stared in shock at Yi Hao and the third old ancestor, who was lying on the ground like a dead dog. The third old ancestor felt that she could not wait to crawl into a crack in the ground. She was a rank 2 ultimate martial god, but she had been slapped to the ground by a young man who she looked down on. If word got out, she would not be able to live. The third old ancestor was too embarrassed to get up, so she pretended to be unconscious and closed her eyes. When the purple sky supreme god saw that Yi Hao was fine, he heaved a sigh of relief and ordered his subordinates, "Hurry up and take care of the third old ancestor." In fact, she was shocked again. She had not expected Yi Hao to be so powerful that he could instantly kill the third old ancestor, who was a rank 2 ultimate martial god. The ultimate martial god was an expert who surpassed the peak of the martial god realm. There were only a few ultimate martial gods in the Myriad Kingdom continent. In the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom, there were only 5 ultimate martial gods. Young man, you did well. The first old ancestor of the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom said to Yi Hao as he watched the third old ancestor being carried away. Yi Hao looked at the first old ancestor and nodded his head kindly. After all, these people were from the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom and were not his enemies. If they could be harmonious, he would try his best. If they could not be harmonious, he would fight until they were harmonious. It seems that we are really old. When the first old ancestor saw Yi Hao, he nodded his head in satisfaction and said with a smile. Then the old ancestors left the place. "Boss, did you see that young man's cultivation level?" In a secret land of the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom, the old ancestors gathered together. Of course, the third old ancestor, who had pretended to be unconscious, was sitting on a chair with a gloomy face. Until now, she still had a look of indignation on her face because she had really embarrassed herself today. Strange, that kid is only a 9th order martial god, but I don't know why he's so strong. Even I can't subdue third. Ziba. The great ancestor was about to say third ancestor, but he changed his mind. That kid is indeed valiant. Third brother and Ziba were not his match. The second old ancestor nodded and said, "I wonder who that kid is. Will he be a threat to us? Besides, there are no good men in the world." Third old ancestor said unhappily, "Third brother, you can't say that he's not a good person just because you were beaten up. I think that kid is pretty good." The second old ancestor said with a smile, "You?" The third ancestor was so angry that his teeth itched, but there was nothing he could do. "Have you noticed?" The grand ancestor suddenly interrupted. "Boss, don't keep us in suspense. What did you find?" The other patriarchs looked at the grand patriarch anxiously. "That brat has Z Llewellyn's bloodline," the grand patriarch said. The violet that the grand ancestor mentioned was naturally the name of his aunt. "What? He's that little bastard? That's impossible. That little bastard is only in his early 20s. How could he have such a cultivation level? Boss, are you sure you're not mistaken? All of the patriarchs were shocked, their faces filled with disbelief. They were the patriarchs of the Violet Divine Kingdom. Of course, they knew everything about the Violet Divine Kingdom. The incident with their aunt had caused a sensation in the Violet Divine Kingdom. They were the ones who had sealed off the news. I picked up that little girl and raised her since she was young. How could I be mistaken? The Grand Patriarch said slowly, looking as if he was recalling something. But that kid's strength and age? How is that possible? He's simply a monster. The third old ancestor seemed to have forgotten that he had been beaten up by Yi Hao. The younger generation will surpass us in time. However, that kid probably has some secret that we don't know about. The second old ancestor sighed and guessed. Why don't we capture that kid and dig out his secret? The third old ancestor's eyes lit up when he heard the second old ancestor's words. The other patriarchs were shocked when they heard the third old ancestor's words. The Grand Patriarch immediately refused. No, that kid is hiding his strength. If we don't dig out his secret, it will backfire on us. Boss is right. Now that Luolan is here, that kid won't do anything to me. He was already merciful when he hit me just now. Otherwise, the third old ancestor wouldn't be sitting here right now, the second old ancestor said shamelessly. I'm just saying. Besides, I'm not that easy to kill. The third old ancestor said stubbornly. However, she also knew that the second old ancestor was right. If Yi Hao had used a weapon instead of slap, she might have really died. Now that she thought about it, she was still scared. Now that she thought about it, she didn't seem to be able to see Yi Hao's movements clearly. In front of Yi Hao, she didn't even have the strength to fight back. The more she thought about it, the more frightened she was, especially when she thought about Yi Hao's age. She felt that she had lived for tens of thousands of years in vain. Tens of thousands of years of bitter cultivation couldn't be compared to a kid in his early 20s. How could she not feel shocked? By the way, boss, are you really not going to care about this war? The second old ancestor suddenly asked worriedly. The third old ancestor also looked at the Grand Patriarch with a worried expression. She didn't expect that the Grand Patriarch would agree to this war. This was a war that the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom was bound to lose. The situation in the Myriad Kingdom continent hasn't changed for too long. This might be an opportunity. After all, it's either destruction in a hopeless situation or rise in a hopeless situation. Danger and opportunity coexist. The Grand Patriarch said slowly. Moreover, it's rare for the Purple Sky Divine Emperor and Luolan to reach an agreement on this matter. What reason do I have to object? But the third old ancestor wanted to say something, but was interrupted by the second old ancestor. Third old ancestor, boss is right. Moreover, that kid Yi Hao caused such a big commotion before. I believe he won't fight a war unprepared. Moreover, that kid's goal isn't in this small Myriad Kingdom continent. If we follow him now, we might be able to leave a bloodline for the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom in this Myriad Kingdom continent. Hearing the second old ancestor's words, the third old ancestor fell into deep thought. In fact, the few old ancestors all knew that they were betting. However, they weren't betting on whether the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom could win or not. They were betting on whether following Yi Hao was the right thing to do, because they saw a glimmer of possibility in Yi Hao, and that was the unification of the Myriad Kingdom continent. Chapter 619. The entire mystic realm quietened down. Because this gamble was too big, directly betting the entire Violet Sky Divine Kingdom. If they lost, then they would really have nothing. Yi Hao, is Ziba all right? After the old ancestors left, the Purple Sky Divine Emperor looked at Ziba with concern. Not long after Ziba was knocked unconscious by Yi Hao, his body had returned to its normal size. Don't worry. You will be fine after a good sleep. He will just be weak for a few days. Yi Hao glanced at Ziba and said, That's good. Hearing Yi Hao's reply, the Purple Sky Divine Emperor felt relieved. She had been afraid that Yi Hao would not control his strength and hurt Ziba. After all, Ziba was a strong fighter in the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom. He could make a huge contribution on the battlefield. If he was really hurt here, it would be too inappropriate. In that case, I will leave first. I will leave this place to you. I still have things to take care of. The Purple Sky Divine Emperor looked at the other Legion commanders. They all looked at Yi Hao with fear. She knew that Yi Hao had given them enough shock. The Purple Sky Divine Emperor thought that these Legion commanders would not dare to cause any more trouble. She could leave with peace of mind. Don't be too stressed. Rest well, Yi Hao said gently as he looked into the Purple Sky Divine Emperor's eyes. Okay. Hearing Yi Hao's gentle words, the Purple Sky Divine Emperor felt warmth in her heart. Ahem. Suddenly, the Purple Sky Divine Emperor coughed a few times. After all, they were in front of the 72 legions. She was still the Purple Sky Divine Emperor. She could not do anything out of line. Otherwise, she would hug Yi Hao for a while. After watching the Purple Sky Divine Emperor leave, Yi Hao retracted his gaze and looked at the 72 legions. When the people of the 72 legions saw Yi Hao looking at them, they immediately stood up straight and were very quiet. After all, Yi Hao had given them enough shock. Even the transformed Ziba and the third old ancestor were no match for Yi Hao. They were even less of a match. So even if they had 3 guts, they wouldn't dare to provoke Yi Hao. Yi Hao scanned the crowd and said, "I'll be the commander. Who else is not convinced? Step forward." The people of the 72 legions looked at each other. None of them dared to speak. In that case, let's go. After Yi Hao finished speaking, he took the lead and flew out. As for the people of the 72 divisions, when they saw Yi Hao fly out, they all hurriedly followed. Which divine nation are we fighting against this time? Yi Hao gathered a legion commander and asked. I think it's the Mozhen nation. The legion commander stood in front of Yi Hao and replied nervously. Mozhen nation. For some reason, Yi Hao thought of Mo Jingfong when he thought of Mozhen nation. I wonder how that girl is doing now. Has she saved the person she wanted to save? Yi Hao murmured in his heart. When he first met Mo Jingfong in the heavenly shaking mountain, Mo Jingfong was searching for herbs. Later on, due to a free combination of factors, the two of them accidentally had sex. All right, how many troops did the Mozhen nation send this time? Yi Hao collected his thoughts and continued asking. At least half of the Mozhen nation's experts. 5,000 martial gods and 500,000 martial sages. The Legion commander analyzed. Towards the end, the Legion commander lost his confidence. Because even if the Mozhen nation sent half of their experts, it was still more than double the Purple Sky Divine nation. Because the number of the 72 legions was not even close to the Mozhen nations. To be honest, the 72 legions at this moment were all prepared to die. Each of them had already planned to fight to the death on a battlefield. After many twists and turns, they flew for 4 to 5 days before finally reaching the battlefield. The battlefield that Yi Hao had arranged was an uninhabited desert. This was because as long as a battle between martial sages and above started, the sky would be dark and the earth would be dark. The destructive power would be extremely strong. Therefore, in order to avoid harming innocent people, large battles between experts would usually start in an uninhabited place. Commander, it looks like the Mozhen nation's people have not arrived yet, a Legion commander said as he scanned the uninhabited desert. After these few days of interaction, many Legion commanders had also become familiar with Yi Hao. Let the soldiers rest first and conserve their energy. Yi Hao nodded. After 4 to 5 days of rushing, he also felt a little tired. Yi Hao walked into the tent that the soldiers had set up for him and fell asleep the moment he lay down on the bed. Grandfather, subordinate has come to report that the Purple Sky Divine Nation's camp is just ahead. The soldiers of the Mozhen nation were flying when Mo Jingfong flew to the front of an old man and held his arm. The old man was God Emperor Mo of the Mozhen nation. He had almost died from chi deviation, but was saved by Mo Jingfong with the spiritual grass that she found. God Emperor Mo looked at Mo Jingfong with eyes full of love and asked gently, Granddaughter, how many troops does the Purple Sky Divine Nation have? The middle-aged men behind God Emperor Mo looked at Mo Jingfong with envy. These people were the sons of God Emperor Mo, but God Emperor Mo had never treated them so well. It seemed that in their impression, God Emperor Mo's good temper was all given to Mo Jingfong. However, in the Mozen nation, God Emperor Mo was an existence that could not be disobeyed. No one dared to go against his orders. About 2,000 martial gods and 200,000 martial saints. Mo Jingfong held on to God Emperor Mo's arm and said sweetly. The coldness that he usually showed to others had also disappeared. Furthermore, the purple sky divine nation's people are resting. To us, this is definitely the best opportunity to launch a sneak attack. Mo Jingfong said with her eyes shining. God Emperor Mo thought for a while and nodded. Granddaughter's words make sense. But who should we send to launch a sneak attack? Royal Father, let your son do this. Mo Ji was the second son of God Emperor Mo. At this moment, he immediately stood out and pleaded. Father, let me do this. I will definitely make the purple sky divine nation's people fall. Father, with Mo Ji taking the lead, the rest of the princes also spoke out. After all, to launch a sneak attack while the purple sky divine nation was resting was a merit that was delivered to their doorstep. Who wouldn't want such a merit? Shut up. Did I ask you? When God Emperor Mo heard his sons quarreling, the smile on his face disappeared and he shouted sternly. With God Emperor Mo's shout, everyone quieted down. This was because they knew that they must not provoke God Emperor Mo at this moment. Otherwise, they would not have a good ending. Grandpa, you're throwing a tantrum again. How many times have I said that it's bad for your body? Seeing God Emperor Mo getting angry, Mo Jingfong immediately acted coquettishly. Isn't it because of your bunch of disappointing uncles? They're too useless. If they could be half as good as your father, I would die in peace. God Emperor Mo said with melancholy. Hearing God Emperor Mo's words, Mo Ji and the rest immediately lowered their heads. Chapter 620. Grandfather, let me and second uncle lead a sneak attack. Mo Jingfong said to God Emperor Mo. God Emperor Mo looked at his second son and nodded in agreement. Second brother, protect Fong Fong well. If Fong Fong loses a single strand of hair, I will skin you alive. Yes, father. Black lines appeared on Mo Ji's forehead as he agreed. However, he was secretly happy. He didn't dote on Mo Jingfong for nothing. Most importantly, she would think of him for all the merits and benefits. As Mo Ji looked at the other princes beside him, they all showed displeasure on their faces, feeling pleased. Granddaughter, lead 2,000 martial gods and 200,000 martial sages for a sneak attack. Grandfather will lead the rest of the soldiers to support you. Yes, grandfather. The night sky was extremely quiet. Yihao's tent was pitch black, and only the sound of snoring could be heard. Yihao, who was sleeping, suddenly sat up. Not good. Someone is here. Although the voices were very soft, Yihao could still clearly hear the soft voices coming from all directions. Yihao flew out of the military tent. Commander, what's wrong? The moment Yihao left the military tent, the guard outside immediately asked, Beat the drum. Yihao looked at the guard and said seriously, Beat the drum? Will there be enemies in the middle of the night? Hearing Yihao's words, the guard was obviously stunned. In the middle of the night, there wasn't even a shadow to be seen. Furthermore, the soldiers were exhausted. It wasn't good to wake them up at this time. Looking at Yihao's sharp gaze, the guard didn't dare to say anything. With a trace of unwillingness in his heart, he started to beat the drum. Dong, dong, dong. The dull sound of the drum immediately rang in the sky above the military tent. What's the situation? Could it be that the enemies are here to attack? Quick, wake up quickly. Hearing the sound of the drum, the soldiers immediately woke up from their deep sleep. Commander, why are you beating the drum so late at night? There aren't any enemies here? Some of the commanders moved quickly and came to Yihao's side to ask. They'll be here soon. Tell our brothers to hide well. Yihao looked ahead and said. Yes, everyone was skeptical when they heard Yi Hao's order. This was because they had used their minds to search the surroundings, but there was nothing out of the ordinary. However, they didn't dare to disobey Yi Hao's orders, so they all went back to hiding around the tents. However, after waiting for a long time, everyone was anxious, but they still didn't see any enemies. Fong Fong, up ahead, is the Violet Sky Divine Kingdom's camp. Mo.Ji pointed in a direction a dozen kilometers away from the Violet Sky Divine Kingdom's camp. Although a dozen kilometers was not a short distance for mortals, it was still a long distance. But to them, it was only a step away, and they could reach it in an instant. At the same time, this distance was a safe distance. Logically speaking, a peak martial god realm expert could only search this far with their intent. In that case, second uncle, let the brothers rest for a moment. In a moment, we will attack in one go. At this moment, Mo Jingfong had also changed into a set of armor. She looked valiant and formidable as she looked at her subordinates who were ready to go. Okay. Hearing Mo Jingfong's words, Mo Ji agreed readily. Mo Jingfong sat on the ground and looked at the night sky. A person appeared in her mind. Sigh, I don't know where that person is now, but I will definitely find you. In Mo Jingfong's mind, she recalled the scene of her being intimate with Yi Hao, and her face instantly turned red. Fong Fong, what's wrong? Mo Jing looked at Mo Jingfong with a smile on her face and asked with concern. This was because Mo Jingfong was God Emperor Mo's precious treasure. If he could coax Mo Jingfong well, his position in the old man's heart would also skyrocket. However, Mo Jingfong didn't seem to give him any face. She stood up and said with a cold face, "Attack." Looking at the back of Mo Jingfong leading the soldiers to attack, Mo Jing's face clearly couldn't hold it in. Stupid girl, you only dare to be so arrogant because the old man dotes on you. Let's see what you'll do when the old man dies. Mo Ji snorted coldly in his heart. Why? It seems like someone is really coming. Prepare for battle. One of the Legion commanders was about to complain when he suddenly noticed something strange and said softly. The other Legion commanders also noticed something strange, and they all ordered their subordinates to prepare for battle. At this moment, everyone looked at Yi Hao's back with eyes filled with admiration. They admired Yi Hao's strength because they didn't notice anything strange, but Yi Hao had already noticed it. This meant that the range of Yi Hao's consciousness was much wider than theirs. Kill. Seeing that the enemy had entered the attack range, Yi Hao immediately ordered. Following this, Yi Hao took the lead and flew forward. He aimed at a martial god realm expert and threw a punch at his face. You're courting death. When the martial god saw that Yi Hao was young, he instantly looked down on him. However, before he could react, Yi Hao's fist had already landed on his face. Instantly, his head was smashed and he couldn't be more dead. After Yi Hao killed one of them, he didn't hesitate and immediately attacked the other martial gods. Kill, kill, kill. Seeing that Yi Hao had made a good start by killing a martial god, the other martial gods were all shocked. The soldiers of the 72 legions were also motivated to fight. The soldiers from both sides also collided. The sky was filled with the sound of weapons colliding. There were dazzling martial arts techniques everywhere, and martial arts power was set off in the air. Take down that kid. Yi Hao's powerful performance instantly attracted Mo Yi's attention. Mo Yi was shocked at first, and then immediately ordered. As soon as Mo Yi finished speaking, more than 10 martial gods flew out from his side and attacked Yi Hao. The martial arts power in the hands of more than 10 martial gods formed an inescapable net and surrounded Yi Hao. Get out of my way. Seeing the attack of the 10 martial gods, Yi Hao didn't take it seriously at all. He directly relied on his body to take it head-on and attacked the martial gods' heads. Good chance. Seeing that Yi Hao didn't put up a defense, more than 10 martial gods were delighted. However, the next scene stunned them, because when their attacks landed on Yi Hao, they couldn't cause any damage to Yi Hao at all. Run! All the martial gods panicked. Knowing that they had encountered a real expert, they reacted quickly and fled backward. However, Yi Hao's speed completely surpassed their speed. In the blink of an eye, Yi Hao had already thrown out more than 10 punches. Plop, plop, plop. The corpses of more than 10 martial gods fell to the ground one after another. When Mo saw this scene, his heart was also filled with fear. Strong. He only had one word to describe Yi Hao now. After Yi Hao finished dealing with more than 10 martial gods, he looked at Mo. Mo was dressed in golden armor. One look, and one could tell that he was either rich or noble. Moreover, he was the one who gave the order just now. Therefore, the next person Yi Hao dealt with was Mo. Yi Hao's figure flashed and attacked Mo. Seeing that Yi Hao was attacking him, Mo. Didn't have the confidence to resist at all and shouted in panic, "Someone come quickly! Protect me!" Chapter 6:21. Yi Hao's attack was about to land on Mo Xian's body. According to Yi Hao's strength, he would definitely kill Mo Xian in one hit and turn his head into a pile of meat paste. At this moment, Mo Xian had completely given up on resisting due to his extreme fear. Yi Hao heard a familiar female voice coming from behind him, and he immediately withdrew his fist. Yi Hao's fist was only a millimeter away from Mo Xian's head. Looking at the fist in front of him, Mo Xian was so scared that he peed his pants. The sweat on his head uncontrollably flowed out. Seeing Yi Hao's fist stop, Mo Xian fell to the ground with a plop. Mo Xian had never felt that he was so close to death before. Just now, he had clearly felt a wave of air sweep past his face. If he hadn't stopped in time, he would probably end up like those martial gods. "Mo Jingfang, why are you here?" Hearing the familiar voice behind him, Yi Hao turned to look at Mo Jingfang. Mo Jingfang was wearing a suit of armor. She had a different kind of beauty and instantly attracted Yi Hao's gaze. "I think we should let our subordinates stop fighting first before we talk." Actually, Mo Jingfang was also a little surprised. She didn't expect to see Yi Hao here. To be honest, seeing Yi Hao, Mo Jingfang was pleasantly surprised. But looking at her subordinates who were still fighting, she hurriedly said, "Stop." Thinking of Mo Jingfang's surname, Yi Hao more or less understood Mo Jingfang's identity and immediately shouted. Mo Jingfang also ordered the soldiers of the Mo Shun Kingdom to stop. At this moment, the 72 legions of the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom and the soldiers of the Mo Shun Kingdom were all dumbfounded. They didn't understand why the war had suddenly stopped when it was still in full swing. "You are the princess of the Mo Shun Kingdom." Although Yi Hao guessed Mo Jingfang's identity, he still asked. And Mo Jingfang nodded. "What about you? From what I know, there shouldn't be someone like you in the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom." Actually, when Mo Jingfang looked at Yi Hao, she was also filled with shock. Even now, she was still in disbelief and unable to calm down, because she hadn't seen Yi Hao for so long. There was a world of difference between Yi Hao's earlier attack and his previous one. Besides, she had witnessed how Yi Hao had killed more than 10 martial gods in an instant. One had to know that Yi Hao wasn't even a match for him before. Now that he looked at Yi Hao's cultivation, he was definitely not a match for Yi Hao. He reckoned that even if he went all out, he wouldn't be able to block Yi Hao's attack unless he used his secret technique. She was very curious. How could Yi Hao grow so quickly in such a short period of time? This was simply unheard of. It's a long story. Yi Hao roughly explained his relationship with the royal ant. As for his relationship with the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom, it wasn't appropriate to talk about it here, so Yi Hao didn't mention it. "I really didn't expect the royal ant of the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom to be your mother." After hearing Yi Hao's explanation, Mo Jingfang was also shocked. One had to know that this was the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom's secret. The Purple Sky Divine Kingdom had sealed it tightly, so she really didn't know anything about it. If she hadn't heard Yi Hao say it personally, she probably wouldn't have believed it even if she was beaten to death. Then what should we do now? Yi Hao looked at the warriors on both sides and looked at Mo Jingfang with a troubled expression. He also didn't expect Mo Jingfang to be the princess of the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom. So whether or not to fight this war was a problem that gave them a headache. Since you're from the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom, then we can't continue this war. We have to end it immediately. Mo Jingfang smiled and said firmly. Hearing Mo Jingfang's words, Yi Hao heaved a sigh of relief. This was because this was the best outcome. Otherwise, if they were to fight, neither side would benefit. No, the war can't end like this. The war was agreed to by Royal Father. You don't have the right to end it. At this moment, Mo Ji suddenly stood up and roared. Hearing Mo Ji's voice, Yi Hao immediately looked at Mo Ji. At this moment, Mo Ji's pants were still dripping with water. Seeing Yi Hao's gaze, Mo Ji's face turned red, and his heart was filled with shame and anger. After all, he was the prince of the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom and had a high chance of becoming the successor. But now he was scared to the point of peeing his pants by a kid. No matter what, if this spread out, he would lose all face. But there was no other way. After all, no one here was a match for Yi Hao. But when he heard Mo Jingfang say that the war should end like this, he was extremely unwilling. Because in his opinion, with the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom's military strength, it was definitely enough to take down the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom's 72 legions. As for Yi Hao, although he was strong, it wasn't like the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom didn't have any experts. It was just that those experts were following God Emperor Mo. Furthermore, he had lost so much face in front of Yi Hao. How could he not get back at him? Second uncle doesn't need to worry about this matter. I will personally talk to grandfather. Mo Ji's face turned cold as she said coldly. Mo Ji's face flashed with a hint of ridicule. Your grandfather dotes on you, but he has to differentiate between the big and small matters. Your grandfather will definitely not agree to this matter. Mo Ji was filled with confidence in this matter, because this war was agreed to by God Emperor Mo, and for this war, the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom had put in too much effort. If this war ended before it even started, then all of the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom's preparations would have been wasted. If the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom was at a disadvantage, then it would still be fine. But the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom was obviously at the advantage, and there was a large number of soldiers behind them. The Purple Sky Divine Kingdom was obviously an advantage. So how could God Emperor Mo unify the war and end it? Yi Hao, follow me to see my grandfather. Mo Jingfang turned her face, and her tone became gentle as she said to Yi Hao, Does this count as meeting the parents? Yi Hao joked. Hearing this, Mo Jingfang's face turned red. All of you listen up. Without this princess's orders, whoever dares to make a move will be killed without mercy. Mo Jingfang was also afraid that something would happen after she left, so she said coldly to the soldiers. Yes, it could be seen that Mo Jingfang had a lot of prestige in the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom. When the soldiers heard Mo Jingfang's orders, they all responded in a loud voice. Ziba, I'll leave the 72 legions to you temporarily. Without my orders, don't act on your own. I'll be back soon. After a few days of rest, Ziba had already recovered. Furthermore, after Ziba recovered, he was full of admiration for Yi Hao. At the same time, he also realized that he was too impulsive that day. If it wasn't for Yi Hao knocking him out and preventing him from using the Titan Strike, he probably wouldn't have the chance to go to the battlefield. Not being able to go to the battlefield was definitely a form of torture for him. Furthermore, if Yi Hao didn't show mercy at that time, he probably would have lost his life long ago. The current Ziba was absolutely obedient to Yi Hao. Don't worry, Commander. With me, Ziba, around, no one will dare to mess around. Otherwise, I'll crush their heads. Second uncle, let's go. Mo Jingfang said to Mo Ji. She was really worried about leaving Mo Ji here. Otherwise, who knew what would happen? Mo Ji's face was filled with reluctance, but he still flung his sleeves and flew towards the direction of God Emperor Mo. Looking at Mo Ji's back, Yi Hao and Mo Jingfang immediately chased after him. Chapter 622. Grandfather. Returning to God Emperor Mo's side, Mo Jingfang immediately held onto his arm. Imperial Father. Mo Ji followed behind him, also greeting him with an unhappy expression. What's wrong? Why are only the two of you back? God Emperor Mo looked at Mo Jingfong, thinking that something had happened, and asked with a frown. The sons of the emperors and soldiers of God, Mo Kingdom, also surrounded them. Because Mo Jingfong had just left, the war couldn't have ended so quickly. For Mo Jingfong to return so quickly, something must have happened. Furthermore, Mo Ji had followed her back. If nothing had happened, the two of them wouldn't have left the soldiers behind. Who is this kid? Suddenly, someone looked at Yi Hao behind Mo Jingfong and asked cautiously. He's an expert from Purple Heaven's divine kingdom. Men, take him down. No one knew when Mo Ji had hidden behind God Emperor Mo and shouted at the same time. Hearing Mo Ji's words, the expressions of the experts of God Mo Kingdom changed. All of them were restless as they stared at Yi Hao with fiery eyes. Lad, are you from the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom? At this moment, Emperor God Mo's voice had turned extremely cold. God Emperor Mo's aura was also restless. It was just that it revolved around God Emperor Mo and was not released. But even so, there were still many people who couldn't withstand God Emperor Mo's aura and couldn't help but take a few steps back. Kid, you're finished this time. Feeling God Emperor Mo's aura, Mo Ji was secretly delighted as he looked at Yi Hao with a cold smile. As long as God Emperor Mo was enraged, it would be easy to kill Yi Hao. Then he would have his revenge. Grandfather, he's the Yi Hao that I was talking about. It's him. He helped me find the herbs and even saved my life. Mo Jingfong quickly said. It's him. Hearing Mo Jingfong's words, God Emperor Mo immediately retracted his aura. So you're my little benefactor? Looking at God Emperor Mo's smiling face, Yi Hao said humbly, God Emperor Mo is too polite. I don't dare to accept your praise. It's just a small matter. What God Emperor Mo? Just be like Fong Fong and call me grandfather. God Emperor Mo smiled and said to Yi Hao, Okay, Grandpa. Yi Hao also happily changed his tone. After all, God Emperor Mo's seniority was there. Furthermore, he had an unclear relationship with Mo Jingfong. It was only right for him to call Mo Jingfong Grandpa. Hearing Yi Hao's address, Mo Ji suddenly felt that things were going to be bad. Even if he was beaten to death, he would never have thought that Yi Hao was the one who saved Mo Jingfong and even helped her obtain the herbs. One must know that this herb had saved the life of God Emperor Mo. God Emperor Mo was a grateful person to begin with. In this case, he reckoned that there would be no way for the war to break out. Mark was secretly anxious in his heart, but there was nothing he could do. Indeed, after God Emperor Mo heard about Yi Hao's identity, he agreed to a truce. Grandpa, I have a request, but I don't know if I should say it. Yi Hao looked at God Emperor Mo and said embarrassedly, What? Just say it. As long as this old man is able to do it, this old man will definitely not reject. God Emperor Mo agreed readily. I want Grandpa to send out the troops and help me attack the Wu Ming Divine Nation. Yi Hao said with his eyes shining. Based on what? Mo Ji suddenly jumped out and interrupted. When Mo Ji saw the dissatisfaction on God Emperor Mo's face, he immediately explained. Emperor Father, you must not do this. It's fine if we don't attack the Purple Sky Divine Nation, but we have no enmity with the Wu Ming Divine Nation. We can't just add another enemy for no reason. Hearing Mo Ji's words, some of the generals felt that Mo Ji's words made sense and started speaking up for him. That's right, Your Majesty. The Wu Ming Divine Nation's strength is on par with ours. Furthermore, we have no enmity with them. It's really not easy to make enemies. Your Majesty, the Wu Ming Divine Nation is not to be trifled with. You must not listen to this brat's bewitchment. All of you shut up. Is it you or me who has the final say in the Mo Divine Nation? God Emperor Mo suddenly roared. Seeing God Emperor Mo's stern expression, everyone immediately quietened down. Granddaughter, what do you think about this matter? God Emperor Mo looked at Mo Jingfong when everyone quietened down. After all, this wasn't a small matter. Although he had asked everyone to quiet down, what they said wasn't without reason. After all, Yi Hao had helped him find the life-saving herb, and he owed Yi Hao a debt of gratitude. However, there were many ways to repay a debt of gratitude. What Yi Hao said was a little too big. Letting the Mo divine nation and the Wu Ming divine nation go to war was equivalent to using the entire Mo divine nation as a bet to repay a debt of gratitude. If there were any mistakes, the entire Mo divine nation would be in danger. Grandfather, you should be the one to decide on this matter. If it was any other matter, Mo Jingfang would definitely help you how to put in a good word. However, she also knew that this matter involved a lot of things. Although she had some feelings for Yi Hao, she didn't have the authority to decide the fate of the Mo divine nation. Therefore, she didn't dare to make a decision on such a big matter, even though she really wanted to help Yi Hao. Kid, if you can take 3 of this old man's palms, I'll help you. God Emperor Mo looked at Yi Hao's expectant eyes and couldn't bear to reject. God Emperor Mo thought of an idea. If Yi Hao rejected, he could reject Yi Hao's request with a clear conscience. Of course, if Yi Hao could really take 3 of his palms, then he would take a gamble and attack the Wu Ming divine nation. However, this hope was very slim. Yi Hao probably couldn't even take one of his palms. Looking at Yi Hao's cultivation, he was only a 9th-level martial god. How could he take one of his palms? Hearing God Emperor Mo's words, Mo Jingfang's gaze tightened. He suddenly thought of Yi Hao's strength. He wasn't sure if Yi Hao could take 3 of God Emperor Mo's palms. Mo Jingfang wanted to say something, but stopped. In the end, he swallowed his words. Because when he thought of his father's strength and looked at Yi Hao, he guessed that Yi Hao wouldn't be able to take 3 of his father's palms. Grandfather, this. Mo Jingfang's face changed when she heard God Emperor Mo's words. She wanted to persuade him, but was interrupted by God Emperor Mo's gaze. All right, I agree. Hearing God Emperor Mo's words, Yi Hao agreed readily. Not to mention others, in the entire Myriad Kingdom continent, there weren't many people who could hurt him with 3 palms. After all, his physical body was forged to the 10th level by lightning. With a 10th-tier physical body, unless the opponent was a sufficiently powerful powerhouse, no one would be able to harm him in the slightest. Good kid, you better think carefully. This old man won't show mercy. Hearing Yi Hao's agreement, God Emperor Mo revealed a satisfied look. It had been a long time since he saw a young man who could maintain such calmness in front of him. Come. Yi Hao stood on the spot and smiled. Then don't blame this old man for being impolite. God Emperor Mo looked at Yi Hao with a smile. Although God Emperor Mo wanted to use his full strength, he was afraid of hurting Yi Hao. When he attacked, he only used half of his strength. Do you guys think this kid can take one of His Majesty's palms? Looking at this kid's cultivation, he's only a 9th-level martial god. Even a peak martial god wouldn't be able to take one of His Majesty's palms. Chapter 623. While the crowd was discussing, God Emperor Mo's palm had already landed on Yi Hao's body. Yi Hao stood at his original spot and looked at God Emperor Mo without dodging. How is this possible? God Emperor Mo's face changed when his palm landed on Yi Hao's body. To be able to make a God Emperor's face change, one could imagine the shock in his heart. God Emperor Mo clearly knew that although he had only used half of his strength, he did not use any martial techniques. Even if this palm landed on a peak martial god expert, he would not feel good. Even if he did not die, he would be injured. However, when it landed on Yi Hao's body, it was like a clay ox entering the sea. There was no reaction at all. On Yi Hao's face, there wasn't the slightest trace of pain. Most importantly, Yi Hao's position did not change in the slightest. This also meant that his attack did not cause any damage to Yi Hao. At this moment, God Emperor Mo could not help but look at Yi Hao in a new light. It can't be right. Your Majesty's palm did not cause any damage to that kid. Not only did it not cause any damage, didn't you see that the kid's position did not change at all? This kid is definitely not a 9th-level martial god. How can a 9th-level martial god be so strong? Looking at Yi Hao's relaxed expression, everyone from God Mo Empire was stunned. Even Mo Jingfeng secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Kid, not bad. Half of my strength did not cause any damage to you. Next, I will use my full strength. Kid, you better be prepared. God Emperor Mo praised Yi Hao. No wonder. So your majesty showed mercy. I was wondering why he did not cause any damage to that kid. Your majesty is going to use his full strength now. That kid is probably done for. However, this kid is indeed powerful. He can actually withstand half of your majesty's attack and still be unharmed. Hearing God Emperor Mo's words, everyone's gaze landed on the two of them. Every single one of them wanted to know whether God Emperor Mo's full strength attack would be able to cause any harm to Yi Hao. Or rather, whether Yi Hao would be able to withstand God Emperor Mo's attack. At this moment, Mo Jingfeng was also looking at the two of them nervously. She didn't know who was stronger between her grandfather and Yi Hao. This time, Emperor God Mo let out a roar as the power of the martial Tao in his body rumbled. Emperor God Mo's eyes focused as he started to take Yi Hao seriously. God Emperor Mo burst forth with all his strength as he struck towards Yi Hao's chest. Get out of the way. Feeling the powerful energy surging out from Emperor God Mo's body, the people of the Divine Ink Nation quickly distanced themselves from Emperor God Mo's attack range. He's actually fine. After God Emperor Mo finished his attack, everyone's jaws nearly dropped to the ground. Yi Hao was still standing there with a smile on his face. He did not move an inch. There's still one more palm. Yi Hao looked at the astonished God Emperor Mo and laughed. Your Majesty, did you go easy on him again? Is this for real? With your Majesty's cultivation, you can even kill a peak martial god with ease. This brat is only a 9th level martial god, but he's actually fine. Father, did you really go easy on him? You didn't use your full strength, right? Including the princes, everyone looked at God Emperor Mo in shock. Looking at the suspicious gazes from the crowd, God Emperor Mo felt wronged. If he didn't do it himself, he would have suspected it himself. But just now, he had used all his strength. It was definitely not fake. Grandfather, don't tell me you really want to help Yi Hao? You purposely came up with this idea to give the officials a reason to go to war, right? Mo Jingfeng also had a face of suspicion. She thought that her grandfather was afraid that the officials would object, which was why he came up with this idea. She couldn't help but ask, do you think that grandfather needs a reason to send troops to fight? Grandfather doesn't need to play with empty words. Is Yi Hao really that strong? Grandfather, your full strength palm couldn't hurt him at all? Hearing God Emperor Mo's words, Mo Jingfeng's eyes widened as she looked at Yi Hao in shock, because she was very clear about God Emperor Mo's cultivation. God Emperor Mo's cultivation had surpassed the peak martial god and reached the 4th level martial god realm. The ultimate martial god realm was the name for those who were above the peak martial god realm. In the 10,000 countries continent, there were very few ultimate martial god realm experts. Only a few experts in the 4 great divine kingdoms had reached the ultimate martial god realm. Even the 4 great divine kingdoms' ultimate martial god realm experts didn't amount to more than 20. Moreover, it was extremely difficult to cultivate to the ultimate martial god realm. That was because it didn't just require the power of the martial way, it also required the comprehension of the laws and the comprehension of the martial way. It was said that as long as one broke through to the 4th level martial god realm, one could break through the void and ascend to the upper realm. Now that God Emperor Mo had reached the 4th level martial god realm, he only needed one step to ascend to the upper realm. Therefore, it could be said that God Emperor Mo was one of the strongest experts in the 10,000 countries continent. Even the strongest expert couldn't cause any harm to Yi Hao even if he used all of his strength. Just how strong was Yi Hao? Most importantly, how old was Yi Hao? At such a young age, he had become the strongest expert in the 10,000 countries continent. This was definitely something that couldn't be explained perfectly by Yi Hao. The younger generation will surpass us in time. God Emperor Mo looked at Yi Hao and couldn't help but swallow his saliva. It was hard for him to imagine that in the 10,000 countries continent, there was someone who could receive his full-strength palm strike and still be safe and sound. Most importantly, this person was a young man who was only in his early 20s. At this moment, God Emperor Mo started to doubt his life. "Grandfather, do you still want to use the third palm strike?" Mo Jingfong couldn't be bothered to be shocked as she looked at God Emperor Mo and asked, "Yi Hao, if you agree to a bet, you must accept your loss. This old man from the endless divine kingdom will continue." God Emperor Mo knew that there was no need to use the third palm strike, because if he were to continue, he would need to use his martial technique. Even if he injured Yi Hao, it would affect their relationship. He didn't want to offend such a young man with such potential. If he could befriend him, he would do his best to do so. Even if he used his martial technique, he might not be able to injure Yi Hao. As for his secret technique, he would never use it unless it was a life-and-death situation. Even more so, he wouldn't use it on his benefactor. "Granddaughter, you guys continue playing. Grandfather will go and deal with the endless divine kingdom first." After God Emperor Mo finished speaking, he transmitted a message to Mo Jingfong. "Granddaughter, this lad is not bad. You must catch him." "Grandfather, what are you saying?" Hearing God Emperor Mo's transmission and seeing the mischievous smile on God Emperor Mo's face, Mo Jingfong's cold face flushed red. She was extremely shy. "Wait, grandfather." Just as God Emperor Mo was about to turn and leave, Yi Hao immediately stopped him. Looking at God Emperor Mo's puzzled expression, Yi Hao immediately asked, "Grandfather, are you going to attack the troops of the Endless Divine Kingdom? You mean to attack the forces of the Endless Divine Kingdom's territory?" Hearing Yi Hao's question, God Emperor Mo immediately understood and asked, "That's right. As long as grandfather attacks the Endless Divine Kingdom's territory, the troops of the Endless Divine Kingdom will definitely panic. By then, they will definitely send reinforcements." Chapter 624. After completing the plan with God Emperor Mo, Yi Hao led his troops and rushed towards Purple Sky, Supreme God Emperor. "Go and tell Royal Ant that if we can defend, we will defend. If we can't, we will retreat. Within 3 days, Wu Ming God Nation will retreat." Yi Hao ordered a subordinate. Yes. Although the subordinate did not believe it, he still obeyed. "Yi Hao, why are you here?" Purple Sky, Supreme God Emperor, was also exhausted. He was surprised to see Yi Hao. "Kid, you didn't run away, did you?" Hearing that Yi Hao had returned with the 72 armies, the Purple Sky Supreme God Nation's old ancestors also rushed over. When they saw that Yi Hao had really returned, the third old ancestor quickly questioned him. Hearing the third old ancestor's question, Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor looked at Yi Hao with concern. This was no small matter. If Yi Hao fled without a fight as soon as the battle began, then the Violet Sky Divine Kingdom would really be powerless to reverse the situation. "I am the little princess of God Mo Nation. My grandfather has already reached an agreement with Yi Hao and is now on the way to attack Wu Ming God Nation." Just as everyone was questioning Yi Hao, Mo Jingfong suddenly stood out and said. Everyone was stunned. Looking at the identity token in Mo Jingfong's hand, they knew that Mo Jingfong's identity could not be faked. Then, everyone looked at Yi Hao in shock. "Welcome, little princess of God Mo Nation." Hearing Mo Jingfong's words, Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor was delighted and immediately said to Mo Jingfong in a friendly manner, "Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor is too courteous. I hope that we will have a pleasant cooperation this time." Mo Jingfong smiled and said to Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor, "You said that God Mo Nation is attacking Wu Ming God Nation now." The third old ancestor was still in disbelief. How did he do it? The third old ancestor was shocked. He realized that he could not see through Yi Hao. The three god dynasties had clearly reached an agreement to encircle and annihilate Purple Sky Supreme God Nation. How could Yi Hao make God Mo Nation change sides so easily? Furthermore, he could even get the Inking Kingdom to help the Violet Sky Divine Kingdom fight against the Void Divine Kingdom. That's right. My grandfather is probably already on his way to the indescribable divine nation. Mo Jingfong looked at the third old ancestor and said in a cold tone, "What? You don't believe me?" The reason for that was because she discovered that the third old ancestor's attitude toward Yi Hao was not very friendly. Thus, she was unwilling to be friendly toward the third old ancestor. Hearing Mo Jingfeng's tone, the third old ancestor felt a little awkward. Although he was unhappy, the Divine Ink Kingdom was helping the Violet Sky Divine Kingdom. He could only smile and say, "Little Princess Mo is joking." "Yi Hao, what's going on between you and this little girl?" Just as Yi Hao was in a daze, the jealous voice of the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom suddenly rang out in his mind. A friend. Yi Hao thought for a moment and realized that although he had slept with Mo Jingfeng before, the two of them had not confirmed their relationship. Oh, is that so? The Purple Sky Divine Emperor had unknowingly walked to Yi Hao's side and pinched Yi Hao's waist with her jade-like fingers. SSS. Yi Hao immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. Seeing that Yi Hao had caused too much of a commotion, the Purple Sky Divine Emperor withdrew her hand and asked with concern, "Yi Hao, are you all right?" Mo Jingfeng also looked at Yi Hao with concern. "What's wrong?" "Yi Hao, I'm fine, I'm fine." Yi Hao hurriedly waved his hand. "Reporting to your majesty, the Jintian Divine Kingdom is calling for war again." At this moment, the sound of war drums came from outside, and a martial sage immediately came to report. Good timing. Hearing the war drums, the Purple Sky Divine Emperor's fighting spirit surged. Although he had brought a lot of troops with him previously, a total of 140 troops. This was because the direction he was heading was the important entrance to the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom. If it was breached, the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom's entrance would be opened for the Jintian Divine Kingdom. Therefore, he had brought 40% of the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom's experts to guard the entrance. However, after 2 rounds of fighting, they had lost both rounds. The Jintian Divine Kingdom had sent 60% of their experts to attack the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom. It was obvious that they had gone all out to take down the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom. The Purple Sky Divine Kingdom is full of trash. Does no one dare to come out and fight? At this moment, in front of the Jintian Divine Kingdom's army on the battlefield, a general in golden armor stood in the void and looked at the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom's camp provocatively. "Damn it, this person is so powerful. He has already killed 3 of our Legion commanders. This person's cultivation must be at the ultimate martial god realm. Otherwise, how could he be so powerful? Do we really need the ancestor to deal with him?" Yi Hao heard the discussion of the soldiers behind him and looked at the Purple Sky Divine Emperor in confusion. "Why don't you arrange for the experts to kill this person?" Yi Hao looked at the general in golden armor and saw that he was only at the rank 1 ultimate martial god realm. Any ancestor could kill him. "We have the ancestor, but so do the other side. If our ancestor attacks now, it means that we are inferior to them and their morale will drop. Moreover, the other side's ancestor will also attack." The Purple Sky Divine Emperor sighed and said with a worried look, "Your Majesty, let me fight. I will crush that boy's head." At this moment, Ziba stepped forward and said, "All right." The Purple Sky Divine Emperor agreed immediately. "Boy, I will crush your head and see if you still dare to be arrogant." Ziba shouted angrily and rushed toward the general in golden armor like a wild bull. Ziba held a giant axe in one hand and a giant hammer in the other. Good timing. When the general in golden armor saw Ziba's weapons with strong martial arts power, he was not afraid. Instead, he was delighted. With his rank 1 ultimate martial god realm cultivation, anyone below the ultimate martial god realm would not be a match for him, no matter how powerful they were. In an instant, the two of them fought fiercely. You were just so. When Ziba saw that he was not at a disadvantage, he could not help but feel proud. "Is that so?" The general in golden armor sneered. "Be careful." Yi Hao looked at the two of them fighting and immediately warned them. Looking at the general in golden armor's attack, it was obvious that he was holding back his strength. On the other hand, Ziba was using all his strength. As expected, just as Yi Hao finished speaking, the general in golden armor suddenly used a martial arts technique. 9 piercings heaven and earth. Immediately, the martial arts power around the general in golden armor surged, and 9 giant sword blades shot out from his sword and surrounded Ziba. Ziba's face changed. He had not expected the general in golden armor to have time to use a martial arts technique. If he used the Titan attack, it would be too late. If he used the Titan attack, he would expose himself and suffer more damage. He might be smashed into meat paste before he could complete his transformation. I can only take it head on. Ziba made up his mind and waved his weapon, spinning heaven and earth. Ziba's weapon was like a propeller. It drove the martial arts power and spun in front of him, forming a giant shield. He could only go all out. If he could block the general in golden armor's giant sword blade once, he would block it with all his strength. Looks like I have to take action. Yi Hao looked at the two of them fighting and sighed. No matter what, he had spent a lot of time with Ziba. Chapter 625. This big guy is not bad, but he is still no match for my son. Sky-shaking Emperor God was watching the fierce battle in the sky from the army of sky-shaking divine nation. The one fighting with Ziba was his 7th son, one of the few God-favored sons of sky-shaking divine nation. He had been cultivating hard and had never made a name for himself. This time, he had brought his 7th son to make a name for himself. That's right, the 7th son is young, but he is already a rank 1 ultimate martial god. Who else in the myriad kingdom continent can be his match? The 7th son is brave and powerful. Unless the ancestor of sky-shaking divine nation appears, no one else can be his match. Shao-Chi is not bad. Your Majesty, you have a good son. Not only the generals, but even the ancestor of sky-shaking divine nation looked at the 7th son with satisfaction. I reckon that big guy can only withstand 3 attacks from his 7th deity before he dies. The generals of the Jintian divine nation analyzed as they looked at the two of them. No, the big guy can withstand at least 4 attacks. An ancestor said, "Go." The 7th son wielded the giant sword and slashed at Ziba. Uproar, uproar, uproar. After 3 consecutive attacks from the giant sword, it was obvious that Ziba's defensive martial arts power was running out. Due to the severe depletion of his martial arts power, Ziba's face was no longer as red as before. Oh no, I can only block it once at most. Ziba's face revealed a bitter smile. Come on, I will fight you to the death. Ziba withdrew his defense and transferred all his martial arts power to his weapon. He wanted to fight to the death with the 7th son. Humph, you are digging your own grave. Seeing Ziba's actions, the 7th son sneered and controlled the giant sword. He guessed that Ziba could only withstand 1 more attack. The 5th attack would definitely turn Ziba into a pile of meat. Die. The 7th deity commanded 2 bombardments to attack Ziba. It's over. Ziba can't hold on any longer. Even the commander of the Ziba Legion can't defeat him. Who else can? Is there really no one in the younger generation of the Purple Divine Nation? At this moment, all the soldiers of the Purple Divine Nation were anxiously watching the fight between the two. The 7th God's child will win. The 7th Son of God would definitely win. The 7th Son of God will win. On the other hand, the morale of the heaven-shaking Divine Nation's soldiers soared as they cheered excitedly. Who was that person? Just as the Celestial Emperor's 4th attack was about to land on Ziba, someone suddenly cried out in alarm. Earth-devouring palm. Yi Hao stood in front of Ziba and used the Earth-rank martial skill, Earth-devouring palm. Although the Earth-devouring palm was only an Earth-tier martial skill, it could not withstand the power of Yi Hao's martial Dao. In an instant, a black vortex that was several hundred feet wide appeared in front of Yi Hao. Destroy! Yi Hao pointed his finger, and the black vortex attacked the 7th Shensi. The 7th God's son's expression changed again and again. He didn't expect such an expert to appear out of nowhere. The 7th deity didn't want to be outdone. He used the remaining 6 giant swords to attack the black vortex. But in the next second, he was stunned because his giant sword was instantly shattered the moment it came into contact with the black vortex. Then, it disappeared without a trace. Just as the 7th deity was in a daze, the black vortex had already wrapped him up and twisted him into nothingness. The 7th deity let out a scream and disappeared from this world. The black vortex also disappeared at the same time. "Thank you." Ziba looked at Yi Hao and thanked him sincerely. At this moment, he finally knew the difference between him and Yi Hao. It was a world of difference. He was no match for the 7th deity at all, but Yi Hao killed the 7th deity in an instant with one attack. At this moment, it was as if time had stopped on the battlefield. There was no sound at all. Everyone looked at Yi Hao in confusion. Some people even opened their mouths wide and looked at Yi Hao in shock. What happened? Who is this young man? How can this person be so powerful? He killed the 7th deity in an instant with one move. Is he from the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom? Why have I never heard of such a powerful person in the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom? I'm not dreaming, am I? The 7th son of God was killed in one move? At this moment, all the soldiers on both sides were shocked. Yi Hao did well. The Purple Sky Divine Emperor was also shocked and praised him without holding back. "Third brother, what do you think?" The 2nd great ancestor looked at the 3rd great ancestor and asked. The 3rd great ancestor swallowed his saliva and said, "This kid is more powerful than I thought. I finally know why I was defeated that day." In fact, the 3rd great ancestor's strength was similar to the 7th deity's. Seeing that the 7th deity had been killed in an instant by Yi Hao, the 3rd great ancestor was secretly glad that Yi Hao had shown him mercy. "Get ready to fight. I guess the Jintian Divine Kingdom is going to go crazy." The 1st great ancestor smiled proudly. No matter what, he felt an indescribable pain in his heart after killing the 7th deity of the Jintian Divine Kingdom. To sum it up, it felt great. After all, a genius like the 7th god's child was too terrifying. If he was allowed to grow a little more, he would definitely be a threat to them. They had not expected the Jintian Divine Kingdom to have such profound means. They had hidden such a genius until now and were willing to reveal it. If Yi Hao had not killed him, none of the 7th deity would have been a match for him. After all, if they had attacked, the ancestors of the Jintian Divine Kingdom would have attacked too. They would not have been able to kill the 7th deity. However, the ancestors of the Jintian Divine Kingdom probably did not expect that there would be a young person who could surpass the 7th deity. Otherwise, they would have stopped him just now. They did not attack Yi Hao because they saw that Yi Hao was young. When they realized what had happened, it was too late. "Kill this kid and avenge my son." "Kill. How dare you kill the genius of the Jintian Divine Kingdom? Leave your life here. Tear this little bastard into pieces." At this moment, the Jintian Divine Emperor and the other ancestors had recovered from their shock and rushed toward Yi Hao crazily. The 7th deity was the hope of the Jintian Divine Kingdom. He was the hope to bring the Jintian Divine Kingdom to the peak. But now he was actually killed by someone. How did they accept this? "You are Yi Hao." The Jintian Divine Emperor had seen Yi Hao's portrait from Zhenwei and finally recognized him. Impossible, absolutely impossible. Yi Hao should be dead. The Jintian Divine Emperor shook his head because he had seen Yi Hao break into the 100 Miles Lightning Dominion. Since he had broken into the 100 Miles Lightning Dominion, it was impossible for him to survive. "I don't care who you are. Since you killed my 7th deity, I will kill you." The Jintian Divine Emperor took out his divine weapon and attacked Yi Hao. The remaining 5 ancestors of the Jintian Divine Kingdom did not hesitate and took out their weapons to kill Yi Hao. "Quick, help Yi Hao!" The great ancestor of the Violet Divine Kingdom shouted when he saw the ancestors of the Jintian Divine Kingdom attacking. Chapter 626. Rolling Heavenly Thunder. Yi Hao suddenly shouted as he looked at the heaven-shaking God Emperor and the heaven-shaking Divine Nation's ancestor. Rumble. Suddenly, Dark clouds gathered in the sky, and thunder boomed. What's going on? This kid can control lightning? The heaven-shaking God Emperor panicked when he saw the scene in the sky. The heaven-shaking divine nation's ancestor did not dare to move forward when he saw the sudden change in the sky. This kid still has a backup plan? The great ancestor of the purple sky divine nation looked at the dark clouds in the sky with fear. Even though they had reached the ultimate martial god realm, they were still afraid of lightning. If he can't control lightning, this kid must be playing tricks. Ancestors, let's kill him quickly. The heaven-shaking god emperor shouted immediately. Regardless of whether Yi Hao could control lightning or not, Yi Hao could not be allowed to live. He would feel very uneasy if he did not kill Yi Hao in 1 second. Kill! The heaven-shaking divine nation's ancestors did not dare to delay any longer. They were not sure if the dark clouds above their heads would send down lightning or not. All the ancestors used their strongest killing moves at once. Die! Yi Hao moved his palm and controlled the purple qilin in his body. Immediately, lightning energy surged out of his body. 6 bucket-sized lightning bolts appeared in the sky and shot toward the heaven-shaking God Emperor and the others. The heaven-shaking God Emperor and the heaven-shaking divine nation's ancestors turned pale when they saw the sudden appearance of lightning. Run! The heaven-shaking God Emperor was not in the mood to attack Yi Hao now. He could feel the aura of death from the bucket-sized lightning bolts. Therefore, he wanted to escape at all costs. He never would have thought that Yi Hao actually really grasped the power of lightning. Needless to say, the group of patriarchs began to flee the moment the lightning appeared. Trying to escape, a cold smile appeared on Yi Hao's face. Lightning domain appear. Yi Hao shouted, and the purple qilin in his body circulated wildly. Lightning energy surged out continuously. The entire sky was instantly filled with the power of lightning. As for the heaven-shaking God Emperor and the many old ancestors, they had nowhere to run. They could only circulate their martial power to resist the lightning. Destroy! Yi Hao shouted. Suddenly, the entire Thunder Dominion began to shrink rapidly. Although the Thunder territory was small, the power of thunder and lightning was increasingly powerful. Suddenly, an ancestor couldn't hold on any longer and was blasted into nothingness by the lightning, leaving behind only a miserable cry. As soon as the scream ended, another scream rang out. Yi Hao, I was wrong. My heaven-shaking God nation is willing to submit to you. Please let me go. The heaven-shaking God Emperor begged in a trembling voice, because under the attack of the lightning, there was nowhere for him to hide. He could already feel that the martial arts power in his body was running out. Due to the lightning, he could not absorb the martial arts power in the air. In the face of living and dignity, he still chose to live. Yi Hao did not pay any attention to him. Keeping an enemy like this alive would only invite calamity. Yi Hao, you will regret this. The heaven-shaking God Emperor saw that Yi Hao was ignoring him and let out an unwilling cry at the last moment. Hearing the heaven-shaking God Emperor's words, Yi Hao sneered in his heart. Just because of this, the bloodline of your heaven-shaking God nation will be destroyed. After killing the last few old ancestors, Yi Hao immediately withdrew the lightning. Yi Hao looked at the qilin in his body and found that it had shrunk significantly. At the same time, its color had faded a lot. It was probably because the lightning energy had been depleted. Where is His Majesty and the old ancestors? After the lightning disappeared, the people of the heaven-shaking God nation immediately looked at the sky. When they found that the heaven-shaking God Emperor and the old ancestors had disappeared, they all panicked. His Majesty and the old ancestors seemed to have been killed. Who is he? How can he control lightning? Why isn't he a member of our heaven-shaking God nation? His Majesty is dead. The heaven-shaking God nation is done for. Brothers, let's surrender. At this moment, there was a commotion in the camp of the heaven-shaking God nation. Fear spread in everyone's heart. I'll give you 2 choices. Kneel down and submit to me, become Yanlong's men, or die. Yi Hao's eyes swept across all the soldiers of the heaven-shaking god nation as lightning flashed. What? He's the young Emperor Yin Long, the first sacred dynasty under the heaven-shaking god nation? How can the young Emperor Yin Long be so young? He's the one who made the myriad kingdom grand ceremonies list disappear. When they heard the name of the Fire Dragon Empire, the people of the heaven-shaking god nation had also heard of it. However, no one expected that the person who made the myriad kingdom grand ceremony known by the world would be so young. Now that they looked at it again, the 7 godchildren were like dung in front of Yi Hao. They were completely unpresentable. Moreover, Yi Hao could control lightning. Looking at the lightning in Yi Hao's hands, everyone was shocked and fearful. The lightning that Yi Hao could control could even kill the heaven-shaking god emperor and the old ancestor. Those were ultimate martial gods, let alone them. They also knew that the heaven-shaking god emperor of the heaven-shaking god nation was dead. The 7 godchildren, their hope, were also dead. Even the old ancestor was dead. They no longer had anyone to be loyal to. If they still insisted on not surrendering, they would be blindly loyal and courting death. We are willing to surrender to the young Emperor Yin Long. Suddenly, someone brought his subordinates and knelt down on the ground. Your loyalty doesn't seem to be enough. Yi Hao immediately checked the stats board and found that most of the soldiers were just saying that they were unconvinced. They were just trying to appease him. You. Yi Hao pointed at those whose loyalty points had not even reached 60. Those who were pointed at by Yi Hao started to panic and their bodies started to tremble. They could not imagine how Yi Hao could see through their inner thoughts. Ding dong. Zhang Zijiang's loyalty increased by 10. Loyalty increased by 10. Loyalty increased by 10. Ding dong. Pan Jinjuan's loyalty increased by 20. Loyalty increased by 15. Loyalty increased by... Ding dong. Ding Wei's loyalty increased by 8. As Yi Hao pointed at those whose loyalty points had not reached 60, the loyalty points of those who were pointed at skyrocketed. They were completely shocked by Yi Hao's means. Not only was he powerful, but he could also see through people's inner thoughts. The more they thought about it, the more terrified they felt. How could they not be afraid of Yi Hao? Each and every one of them could only be dead set on being loyal to Yi Hao. Otherwise, it was easy to lose their little lives. What is he doing? Can he see through people's inner thoughts? Who knows? It doesn't look like he's pretending to be mysterious. It seems that the Myriad Kingdom continent is really going to change. At this moment, the old ancestors of the heaven-shaking divine nation were also discussing. There was a trace of fear in their eyes when they looked at Yi Hao. If they were to attack together, they might be at a disadvantage against the old ancestors of the heaven-shaking divine nation. Chapter 6:27. Otherwise, they wouldn't be watching quietly as Yi Hao subdued the soldiers of the Jintian divine nation. If these soldiers were recruited, they would definitely increase the military strength of the nation. After all, there were a total of 6,000 martial gods and 600,000 martial sages here. Logically speaking, if these people joined forces to deal with Yi Hao, they would definitely be able to kill Yi Hao. However, they had already been scared out of their wits by Yi Hao. All they wanted to do was to survive. How could they possibly think of joining forces to deal with Yi Hao? It seems like there are still some stubborn people. Do you really want me to kill them? Yi Hao swept his gaze over the crowd and discovered that 90% of them already had a loyalty rating of 80% and above. However, there were still a few people whose loyalty was still hovering around 60%. Yi Hao deliberately looked at those whose loyalty had not reached 60%. It seems like I have no choice but to make an example out of them. Yi Hao thought to himself as he looked at the few people whose loyalty was really not increasing. Destroy them. Yi Hao chose 10 people whose loyalty was not high enough and whose potential was limited. He directly released 10 bolts of lightning. The 10 people panicked and were vexed as they were struck by the lightning bolts and turned into charcoal. As for the remaining people whose loyalty was not high, they were completely flustered. They knew that Yi Hao was making an example out of them and scaring them. However, they had no choice but to accept it. This was because they were also afraid of death. They could not guarantee that Yi Hao would not make an example out of them. If he did, the people who would be killed later would not be them. All of you get up. Yi Hao pointed at those whose loyalty had reached 80% and above. The remaining people who were kneeling on the ground were filled with fear of Yi Hao. They could not control their trembling bodies. They finally realized that they were practically invisible in front of Yi Hao. They all put away their petty thoughts and swore in their hearts that they would be loyal to Yi Hao. This was because if they were not loyal to Yi Hao, their lives would be in danger later. You can stand up. Every time someone's loyalty reached 80, Yi Hao would ask them to stand up. Those who stood up could not help but sigh in relief. Their bodies were already drenched in cold sweat. How did he do it? It seems like he can really see through people's loyalty. Could it be that he can really see through people's inner thoughts? This is simply too perverted. The patriarch of the Violet Sky Divine Kingdom was even more fearful of Yi Hao now. They were able to analyze a person's loyalty after reaching the ultimate martial god realm. However, he had to use it on people whose cultivation was lower than his. He also had to use his aura to pressure them, carefully observe the changes in their expressions and body movements, and then analyze whether the person was loyal to him. However, it wasn't a 100% success rate. Moreover, it could be used in large quantities against those with lower cultivation realms, using martial arts power to mess up their minds. However, when it came to martial sages and martial gods, the effects of pressure would be much weaker. This was because the difference in their cultivation levels was not too great, so the effects would not be as good. Moreover, when it came to martial gods and martial sages, it would only be used on a few dozen people at a time. Anymore, and there wouldn't be any obvious effect. Unlike Yi Hao, there were more than 600,000 people. Yi Hao only glanced at them, and without even using his aura, he could analyze which of the 600,000 people were loyal to him and which were not. If such a person was not terrifying, they could not think of anyone who could be. In the end, Yi Hao killed nearly 100 people under his strong coercion. The remaining soldiers of the Jintian Divine Kingdom all had a loyalty level of more than 80. Yi Hao selected a group of soldiers with a loyalty level of more than 90 to serve as captains or commanders of these soldiers. The Violet Sky Divine Emperor looked at Yi Hao in a daze. The Jintian Divine Kingdom had officially disappeared from the Myriad Kingdom continent. Yi Hao's position had directly replaced the Jintian Divine Kingdom's position. At this moment, Yi Hao was definitely not inferior to the other three Divine Kingdoms. After cleaning up the Jintian Divine Kingdom, Yi Hao smiled at the Violet Sky Divine Emperor and said, "Let's go. Let's go encircle the Jintian Divine Kingdom." All right. The Violet Sky Divine Emperor nodded in agreement. The two armies completely merged into one army. More than 10,000 martial gods and 1 million martial sages swept across the Jintian Divine Kingdom in a mighty manner. Along the way, countless nations were scared out of their wits when they saw such a lineup. All the emperors and ministers knelt down to see them off. What's going on? I think I saw the military flag of the Fire Dragon Empire just now. It seems that the Fire Dragon Empire's military flag is more than the Violet Sky Divine Kingdom's. When did the Fire Dragon Empire become so powerful? It seems that they are attacking the Jintian Divine Kingdom. What? Didn't the Jintian Divine Kingdom's army just pass by? Isn't this the three Divine Kingdoms attacking the Violet Sky Divine Kingdom? How did it become an encirclement of the Jintian Divine Kingdom? Seeing the army passing by, the people kneeling on the ground started to discuss. They all had a feeling that the situation in the Myriad Kingdom continent was about to change drastically. At this moment, the most oppressed person was the Jintian Divine Emperor. Damn it! What is this Divine Emperor, Mo, doing? I must skin him alive. The Jintian Divine Emperor hurried towards the Jintian Divine Kingdom. Along the way, he cursed countless times. Originally, he had led the army to attack the Imperial Ant and won 3 battles in a row. The Imperial Ant was beaten back continuously. Just when he wanted to take advantage of the momentum to attack and kill the Imperial Ant, he suddenly received news that his backyard was on fire. The Divine Ink Kingdom, which was also in the Alliance, was attacking the Jintian Divine Kingdom. When he heard the news, he was dumbfounded and could not believe it. After repeated confirmation, the Divine Ink Kingdom was really attacking the Jintian Divine Kingdom. When he heard the news, he was furious. Then he was puzzled. He did not understand why the Divine Ink Kingdom, which was in the same alliance, would suddenly attack the Jintian Divine Kingdom. Although he could not figure it out, he had to give up the perfect opportunity to attack and led the army back to the Jintian Divine Kingdom. He could not wait to rush back to the Jintian Divine Kingdom and kill Divine Emperor Mo. He wanted to let Divine Emperor Mo know that he was not to be trifled with. Your Majesty, that Divine Emperor Mo, I guess he had bad intentions from the start and did not sincerely cooperate with us. That's right, otherwise he would not have agreed so quickly. Those despicable people from the Divine Ink Kingdom dare to sneak attack our Jintian Divine Kingdom. We must not let them off easily. Hearing the words of the generals, the Jintian Divine Emperor said angrily, "My beloved ministers, rest assured. This emperor will make Divine Emperor Mo pay a painful price for his actions." The Jintian Divine Emperor was not afraid of Divine Emperor Mo at all. In terms of strength, the Jintian Divine Kingdom was stronger than the Divine Ink Kingdom. Your Majesty, what about the Jintian Divine Kingdom? An old ancestor asked worriedly. Chapter 628. Your Majesty, when the time comes, we will destroy the Ink God Kingdom, and the heaven-shaking God Kingdom will destroy the Violet God Kingdom. Then, on this myriad kingdom continent, won't there be only 2 God-grade factions left? 2. Hee. Emperor God Wu Ming sneered. I don't like to share things with others. Everyone's heart froze as they understood Emperor God Wu Ming's intention. We wish your Majesty the best in unifying the myriad kingdom continent. Huh? Emperor God Wu Ming laughed out loud. He was in a good mood, and the anger from before had dissipated, because he had the possibility of accomplishing a pioneering feat that no one could accomplish, and that was to unify the myriad kingdom continent. Emperor God Wu Ming was extremely excited at the thought that he would be the first to create history and unify the myriad kingdom continent. He had to thank Divine Ink Nation for their sudden betrayal. Otherwise, 3 Gods Nation would have attacked Purple Heaven Divine Nation, and the final outcome would have been 3 out of 4. It was impossible for him to fight against 2 divine kingdoms by himself. Now, he only needed to destroy Divine Ink Nation and wait for Heaven-Shaking Divine Nation to destroy Purple Heaven Divine Nation. Before Heaven-Shaking Divine Nation could react, he would destroy Heaven-Shaking Divine Nation. By then, the entire Myriad Kingdom continent would belong to him, Emperor God Wu Ming. He, Emperor God Wu Ming, would become a #1 emperor of all times. Father, do you trust that kid that much? Emperor God Wu Ming is already on his way back. If that kid doesn't come to save us, we'll be surrounded. At this moment, Mo's face was filled with fatigue as he looked at God Emperor Mo anxiously. Emperor God Mo's eyes were also filled with fatigue. He had thought that he would be able to destroy the Abyssal Divine Nation in one go. But he didn't expect Wu Ming Divine Nation to be harder to deal with than he thought. The battle had been going on for a few days, and neither side had the upper hand. Furthermore, Wu Ming Divine Nation didn't want to fight. They retreated without hesitation when they couldn't win. Although he had conquered a lot of Wu Ming Divine Nation's land. But after an intense battle, the land that he had conquered had turned into ruins. And these ruins weren't of any help to him. Imperial Father, I think we should retreat. If we retreat now, we can still escape unscathed. Emoji saw that God Emperor Mo had sunk into silence and spoke once more. After all, he was the one with the highest hopes of becoming the successor of the Ink God Kingdom. He did not wish for the Divine Ink Kingdom to perish here. I believe in Yi Hao. Rest for a moment and continue attacking. God Emperor, Mo recalled Yi Hao's strength and said with a resolute gaze, Imperial Father. Hearing God Emperor Mo's words, Mo Ji cried out unwillingly. There's no need to say any more. God Emperor Mo's eyes turned cold. Emoji couldn't help but shudder and didn't dare to say anything more. Emoji stared at God Emperor Mo's back with resentment as he muttered in his heart, Father, why didn't you listen to your son's advice? Father, you're already old. Don't blame your son. Mo Yi's eyes were fierce, as if he had made a decision. He turned around and flew in the direction where the ancestors were resting. Emperor God Mo took a glance at Mo Xian's back view. Without thinking much, he retracted his gaze. He had some understanding of his son. Prepare to attack. God Emperor Mo squinted his eyes as he looked towards the direction of the Ink God Kingdom. To be honest, he was extremely nervous at this moment. I wonder how Yi Hao is doing. God Emperor Mo thought anxiously. He had already received news that Ink God Emperor was rushing back with his subordinates. If Yi Hao couldn't make it in time, he would be attacked from both sides. The war continued for 3 to 4 days. Both sides were still in a stalemate. Ink God Kingdom had retreated by a few more cities. Brothers, hold on a little longer. His Majesty has sent news that he will be here soon. At this moment, a general of the Ink God Kingdom shouted excitedly, Roar! 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 The soldiers of Ink God Kingdom roared excitedly when they heard the general's words. Damned Ink God Kingdom. We can finally retaliate. Wait till His Majesty returns. I will definitely kill those bastards. We have been retreating for so long. I have been holding in my anger for a long time. My hands are already itching. I hope Ink God Kingdom won't be scared till they wet their pants. Ha ha! At this moment, the soldiers of Ink God Kingdom were discussing excitedly. On the other hand, the atmosphere in Ink God Kingdom's camp wasn't too optimistic. I really don't know what His Majesty is thinking. Instead of attacking Purple Sky God Kingdom, he chose to attack Ink God Kingdom. I heard that Ink God Emperor is rushing back with his army. If we don't send reinforcements, we will be dead. Who said we didn't send reinforcements? That Yi Hao expert has already said that he will send reinforcements after destroying heaven-shaking God Kingdom. Don't be too naive. Let's not talk about whether Yi Hao's words can be trusted. Heaven-shaking God Kingdom isn't that easy to destroy. That's right. Heaven-shaking God Kingdom is still a God Kingdom. How can it be destroyed in such a short period of time? No matter what, Yi Hao's expert is indeed strong. He seems to be even stronger than His Majesty. I believe in Yi Hao. The atmosphere in Ink God Kingdom's camp was a little gloomy. Many people were discussing. However, many of them were convinced by Yi Hao's strength and became Yi Hao's fanatical fans. They trusted Yi Hao unconditionally. But more than that, their faces were filled with anxiety. They didn't believe that heaven-shaking God Kingdom was that easy to destroy. They were only thinking about what they should do when Emperor God Wu Ming rushed back, and they would be attacked from both sides. Brothers, you've worked hard. At this moment, a middle-aged man in a python robe walked over with a smile. He was followed by a few old men. When the soldiers saw him, they were shocked. They immediately stood up and greeted him. Greetings to Old Ancestor and the Second Prince. That's right. The person who came was the Second Prince, Emoji. After he was defeated by Ink God Emperor, he rushed to the resting place of the Old Ancestors. Through his extravagant explanation, he managed to convince the Old Ancestors. Brothers, my father is already old. He was tricked by Yi Hao and wants to bury us in the hands of Ink God Kingdom. That Yi Hao is using us as a tool to delay Ink God Kingdom. In the end, he wants us to fight with Ink God Kingdom so that Yi Hao will benefit from it. As the second prince of Ink God Kingdom, I can't let this happen, Emoji said righteously. His tone was impassioned and stirred up the hearts of the soldiers. The mood of the soldiers, who were already unstable to begin with, was easily stirred up by the ink. Impossible. How could Yi Hao's expert lie to us? Moreover, His Majesty is old and vigorous. He's meticulous. How could he be tricked by Yi Hao's expert like what your highness said? That's right. Your highness is trying to stir up the hearts of the soldiers. Are you trying to rebel? I wonder if his majesty knows about your highness's actions. At this moment, a few people stood out and refuted Emoji's words. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.